Chapter 895. Monkey didn't wait for him to finish his sentence. His smiling voice turned cold. Who are you calling unkind? Master Monkey, that's not what I meant. The middle-aged man still wanted to explain. Monkey interrupted him unhurriedly. The lady you called unkind is the boss of the entire ghost organization. What? The middle-aged man was completely dumbfounded. He didn't even know what to say next. Only layers of sweat appeared on his forehead one after another. Monkey continued, that child is her son, our little boss. I don't think I need to tell you what the ghost organization's principles are, right? If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll eliminate them completely. Inexplicably, this sentence appeared in the middle-aged man's mind. His fingers couldn't help but tremble. Who would have thought that the leader of the famous ghost organization would appear here? This was just an ordinary second-tier city in the mainland. It wasn't even considered a first-tier city. Yet, the mercenary queen, who had been out of action for 3 years, had appeared again. Indeed, he had heard from people in the underworld that the ghost organization had been resurrected and had set their sights on human trafficking in the mainland. However, he had always thought that it was fake news spread by people in the underworld who didn't like Sixth Brother. This was because the ghost organization had no reason to cross the Atlantic Ocean to get rid of a human trafficking organization that had nothing to do with them. Now, Tomcat finally understood why all the members of the ghost organization were mobilized. It was because one of Sixth Brother's underlings had fooled around and abducted a child he shouldn't have. In the beginning, Old Cat wanted to use the attitude of a human to make Hellion way back off. Now, he was thinking about what to do next to make up for his failure to recognize a great person. Anyone who had been in the underworld knew that no matter who they could provoke, they could never provoke the dark spirit, who ate people without spitting out the bones. It's a misunderstanding. This is all a misunderstanding. Tomcat couldn't move his hands. He tried his best to make himself look as humble as possible. The phone was still connected, and Monkey's voice was very cold. You can explain to my boss whether it's a misunderstanding or not. If she says it's a misunderstanding, we are still friends. If she says it's not a misunderstanding, we will reach Yungue railway station in half an hour. By then, my brothers won't be as nice as I am. When Old Cat heard this, he had no choice but to hang up the phone and look at Hellion Vivian with a dry smile. Old Cat was blind. Tell me, isn't this like a flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple? We don't recognize each other. Are you done with the call? Hellion Vivian looked at him with a smile and put away the phone with her left hand. Old Cat was getting goosebumps from her stare. He immediately nodded. I'm done. I'm done. Then tell me in detail. What's your relationship with Master Lu? Why do you want to protect him so much? Hellion Vivian's smile deepened. Old Cat felt cold sweat all over his body. There's nothing between us. We're just normal friends. After all, we're in the same underworld. More friends means more options. If I had known that he had offended you, I definitely wouldn't have gotten involved in this. So you're saying that this kidnapping case has nothing to do with you? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Old Cat let out a sigh of relief. To be honest, I'm not that heartless to do such a thing. I do have a few children under me, but these children joined on their own accord. Usually, they would steal around the train station to earn some money to spend. Breaking someone's leg and then asking them to get it back is too immoral. I can't stand the psychological burden. Although I'm not a good person, I know that it's karma. I can steal money, but I can't do such a truly outrageous thing. To be honest, I don't have the ability to deal with the people above. Boss Wei, although what I said at the beginning was not pleasant to hear, what I said was the truth. Sixth Brother has a backer behind him. If you want to hurt him, you have to get rid of the person who is in charge of the Yungue region. This clue is buried too deep. Some people become more ruthless the higher they climb. They don't care whether what you do is right or wrong. Once you offend their interests, they will bury the news. The trafficking of children and women has been going on for a long time. The reason why Sixth Brother is so rampant is that he knows that too many people have benefited from him. How many people in the upper class are in his hands? Any one of them is enough to make a person lose his current position. What's more, this person in the Yungue region is also sent from the capital city. He has formed a faction in this area long ago. It is not easy to get rid of all of them. If you put him in jail today, it is very likely that he will be released in a few days. Even if Sixth Brother really goes to jail, as long as someone takes the money, there will be people who dare to do this business again. After all, everyone knows that at the very least, the higher-ups have tacitly approved of this business. I know what you mean. Helene Vivian moved her fingers. Before Old Cat could react, he heard a click and the handcuffs on his wrists were unlocked. Helene Vivian looked at him and said in a calm voice, "Give it to me. There are rules in the underworld. The information fee will be paid by Monkey directly. But Old Cat, I have to remind you that it's better not to accept some unscrupulous money. Since you know it's karma, won't it be troublesome for you to take the purple jade toad?" Old Cat shivered and hurriedly said, "Boss Wei, you have to believe me. Even if I accept Old Six's gift, I didn't tell him that you were coming. He must have had his eyes on the 2 children you brought with you long ago. That's why he sent someone to follow you as soon as you entered the Yungue district. He wants to know your background." "My background?" Helene Vivian smiled and looked at him again. She played with the handcuffs in her hands and said, "Old Cat, let's not beat around the bush. Do you have any other information about Old Six that you haven't told me?" Old Cat didn't say anything. He kept looking at his tea tray. Helene Wei also set her gaze on that. Her expression was indifferent, but she hit the nail on the head. No matter how you look at it, just a purple jade toad and a peach tree won't be able to suppress the matter on your ancestral grave. This time, Old Cat's expression changed. He looked at Helene Vivian and shook violently. How do you know about my ancestral grave?" The peach tree was originally used to ward off evil spirits, and the purple jade toad was the first choice of many officials and nobles in ancient times to guard their coffins. Also, your glabella is black and there is an incense behind you. It's obvious that something is wrong with your ancestral grave. Helene Wei smiled. "What makes me curious is, who in the world gave you such an array, blocking your meridians for you?" Chapter 896. Impossible. This is a formation set up by the master. There won't be any problems. Tomcat stood up immediately. In the face of his agitation, Helene Wei merely walked to the tea tray and said in a calm voice, "There shouldn't have been any problems, but the mistake lies in the fact that the purple-haired toad came from the graveyard. Not only can it shake the coffin, but it also carries resentment. This resentment can indeed be suppressed by the mahogany, but the mistake lies in your layout." Helene Vivian pointed to the side of the mahogany. "We Chinese believe in feng shui the most. It has nothing to do with superstition, but it's the luck that comes with it. The formation you set up is a classic coffin suppression formation, but there's a window here. Opposite the window is the train station, and the northwest wind is blowing. Many people know that although the train station is full of yang energy, because of the airflow, it makes people feel restless. It's easy to create resentment here, and this resentment will be blown in through the wind. It's fine if it's only for a short time, but if it's for a long time, you won't even know how you died, let alone your glabella. Opening a window here is equivalent to not closing the coffin. Any kind of dirty thing can gather here, not to mention Tomcat. Are you really just trying to make some money secretly? Tomcat had already been shocked by Helene Vivian's professional explanation. Now that he heard Helene Vivian's last question, he didn't dare hide anything and told her everything. In this day and age, if you asked on the streets what was the most profitable business, 8 out of 10 people would answer, real estate. Of course. With the economy booming, prices soared, and so did property prices. Getting a loan from the bank, giving IOUs to the construction workers, and setting up a sales center to sell pre-sold houses to recoup the cost. As long as the relevant departments were taken care of, the real estate business was a no-brainer. Real estate developers who dared to take risks were all filthy rich. Tomcat had already made a lot of money in this business, but this time, during the construction, it hit a woman who ran out from Old Six's place. Apparently, the woman was looking for her child. It was confirmed that Old Six and his group were notorious human traffickers. Her daughter was locked up in the warehouse by them. The woman had called the police and wanted to wait there. She didn't expect that what she waited for wasn't help, but an accident. Although it was called an accident, everyone here knew that it wasn't that easy to get into an accident. They were most afraid of accidents like this, so they made sure to take care of their safety. This woman's death isn't that simple, Tomcat said firmly. Tomcat said firmly, but the unlucky one was me. Once the news came out, my building couldn't even be built anymore. Everyone said that the place was unlucky. Many people who were interested in the future houses didn't want to buy them. I got the money back, but my project was stopped. Even if the building was built again, it wouldn't be able to fetch a good price. At first, I thought that was the end, but later on, I dreamed every day. I dreamt that your family member came to you and said that he was cold down there. Helene Vivian guessed the result before he finished. Tomcat was shocked again. He was worshipping Helene Vivian like a god. Yes, it's all right. Boss Wei, how did you know? He never knew that the mercenary queen knew these things. She was even better than those masters. When building a new house, the biggest taboo is to be stained with the aura of death, especially in modern real estate. No one knows what the situation was like underneath. If I'm not wrong, this land used to be a pit for the dead. In the beginning, nothing happened because they didn't have the chance to come out. Then, someone died, and this person had an unfulfilled wish. It was the wish of a mother for her daughter. This wish caused some undead to sense it. If you build a house for them and don't respect them, of course, they will give you a taste of your own medicine. They will disturb your ancestral tombs, and the dead won't be able to rest in peace, so they will beat you in the form of dreams. Helene Vivian paused. It seems that the woman's dead spirit was bound by some kind of formation. Otherwise, with the aura of death on her, she would have gone straight to Sixth Brother. She wouldn't have just influenced the surrounding dead spirits and caused them to come and disturb you. Alright, since we're here, tell me about the master you mentioned. What's his background? This master is very godly. If what Boss Wei said is true, then she must be the one who helped Sixth Brother get rid of these unclean things. She came to Yunqing more than 2 months ago. Since she came, Sixth Brother has been earning more and more money. His luck has been getting better and better. Even the stocks that Sixth Brother bought have multiplied several times. Old Cat's voice was full of envy. Not everyone can meet this master. She won't accept anyone's business for money. She was the one who approached Sixth Brother. It was said that she wanted to cooperate with Sixth Brother. I was curious, so I asked around. It turned out that she approached Sixth Brother because of his business. Every time he made a deal, she would choose one of the children. No one knew what she wanted to do. Later, with Sixth Brother's recommendation, I finally met this master. She didn't look like the kind of person who would do all kinds of evil. Not only that, she had a natural Buddhist fragrance. She looked very elegant. Her skin was very white, and her hair was black and smooth. She looked like a female teacher. She was very gentle to children, but very cold to others. It seemed that in her eyes, Sixth Brother and I were the most ordinary mortals. A woman. Helene Vivian's eyes narrowed. Is there anything different about her? Different places. Old Cat thought for a moment. Oh, right. Her clothes are different from ours. It looks like a Kasaya, but it doesn't look like one. Hearing this, an image flashed through Helene Vivian's mind. A child, a woman, a Kasaya. I think I know who she is. Who is it? Old Cat was very curious about this, too. He felt that this master was very mysterious, as if he didn't eat the food of mortals. Helene Vivian curled his thin lips. It can't be a person. Old Cat, Helene Vivian didn't say anything else. Instead, he called Monkey again. His eyes were full of shrewdness. Chapter 897. What's the progress on the talisman I asked you to check? Helene Vivian tapped her fingers on the wooden table as she looked at the train station outside the window. Are there still no clues? As Monkey located the talisman, he replied, Boss, you're really smart. I've asked all the people in your line of work. Masters, accomplished monks, and all of them said that this talisman is really strange. They have never seen such a talisman before. I've hacked many websites, but I can't find any information about this talisman on the internet. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows. What about related terms? When searching, related terms will usually appear. What are the related terms for this talisman? The related terms for this talisman are very strange. Things like flying biscuits, curry, and cream chicken. They're all Indian dishes. Oh right, there's also Nepal. Monkey looked at the road in front of him as he sped up. Helene Vivian narrowed her eyes. No wonder she came to Yungue district. Who? Monkey didn't understand what his boss was talking about. Helene Vivian smiled faintly. Instead of answering, she asked, Do you know where the real origin of Buddhism is? Monkey didn't answer, but Tomcat listened by the side and was very excited. I know this. Wasn't it in Journey to the West? Back then, Tripitaka and his group crossed the mountains and Yellow River to India to obtain the scriptures. They went to the origin of Buddhism. India is now India. Hearing that, Helene Vivian glanced at him but didn't say anything. Qingchen put the last Swarovski diamond into Bailey Shangxia's pocket and turned to Tomcat. Buddhism has been around for more than 3,000 years. It was created by the country of Kapilawai. Western countries generally believe that Buddhism originated from India. In fact, India is also trying to create the image of a holy land of Buddhism. This gives many people the illusion that Buddha was born in India. In fact, the country of Kapilawai isn't in India, but in Nepal. If you want to go to Nepal, you have to cross the border from Yun City. Qingchen explained very seriously. At the same time, she did not forget to take away the things that should be taken away. Bailey Shangxia was afraid that Old Cat would fall, so he simply stood behind him. After glancing at Old Cat's dumbfounded expression, his dark red eyes became even more sinister. His voice was very cool. Don't you know such common sense? Uncle, you should read more books when you have time. Humans are just that stupid. Tomcat, was his IQ being mocked by 2 3-year-old children? Was there a mistake? He likes children. He's from Nepal, an ancient Maharaja city. He has a gentle personality and a quiet appearance. Helene Vivian's eyes also smiled. This reminds me of someone. Qingchen tottered over with small steps. Are you the mother goddess of the devils? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Tomcat's face turned pale. Are you talking about Master? She's that mother goddess of the devils. Bailey Shangxia smiled, and his demonic aura intensified. Mother goddess of the devils, one of the 20 guardian heavens. She's also known as Empress Hanli. In the ancient Maharaja city, a Buddha was born. They held a celebration, and 500 people attended. On the way, they met a pregnant woman. The woman accompanied them, but unexpectedly, she had a miscarriage midway. The 500 people left her. The woman swore that she would reincarnate in the Maharaja city in her next life and eat all the children in the city. Later on, she fulfilled her oath. After reincarnating in the Maharaja city, she captured the children in the city and ate them. Such a person should come to our demon world. Why did she enter Buddhism and become Xian Guanyin? Hellion Vivian smiled when she heard this. She reached out and rubbed Shangxia's head. Because in the Buddhist story, she didn't hesitate to steal human children and kill them for food in order to raise her own children. Buddha hid the youngest of the 500 children, so she searched everywhere crazily. Buddha said to her, "You have 500 children. If you're so sad to lose one, how would the mothers who lost their only child feel?" Because of this, she was influenced. Later on, she became Xian Guanyin. We can use Buddhism to guide her. As she spoke, she said to the other side of the phone, "Monkey, quickly check the family situation of all the high-ranking officials in Yungue district. I want it now." Okay. Monkey was wearing a Bluetooth earpiece. He parked the car by the roadside after a turn. He turned on the mechanical computer on the passenger seat and plugged one of the wires into the car's navigation system. He cracked the WF password in the vicinity in a few seconds. He then connected to the internet and began searching. Soon, he found the information he wanted. "Boss, I've found the information of all the high-ranking officials in Yungue district." Hellion Vivian's tone was neither fast nor slow. "How many of them have children?" "All of them. At this age, they should have children." After Monkey finished speaking, he directly took a screenshot and presented the information on the screen of Hellion Vivian's phone. Hellion Vivian took a look at her phone. "Very good, find out all the people who are backing Sixth Brother and have received money from him. Old A, Gold, you and Monkey go and challenge how to be a good human trafficker. You guys continue the original route. After 20 minutes, we'll gather at the train station and go in together. Bring your weapons, especially L, you have too many copper coins hanging on your boots and pants. You'll be checked sooner or later. The mainland is better in this aspect than other regions, so don't underestimate the security system here, understand? At most, we'll just say that it's a performance art. Cosplay is not mainstream. It's normal for Elf to have such aesthetic standards at his age." The screen cut to Ass's face. The young man sneered. "I'll blow your head off with one shot." "Alright, the game begins. Adjust your watches." Hellion Vivian raised her hand to look at her wrist. "It's 3:24 in the morning. In 20 minutes, I want to see you. Gold, Old Egg, Monkey, I want to hear good news from you in 30 minutes. Be careful. If you get hurt, Chingchen's heart will ache." Monkey sniffed and was so touched that he was about to cry. "Little boss, quickly come and get familiar with me. I haven't carried out missions in a long time. Following boss is still the best. It's not challenging at all for me to pretend to be a scammer when I'm doing feng shui for others. Tomcat, so you're not a master. You've been scamming me all this time. Let's go." With these two words, Hellion Wei swiftly hung up the phone and put it into her pocket. Then, she led the two children who had returned from a rewarding journey and walked out. Tomcat reached out and grabbed her. "Boss Wei, what are you trying to do?" Why are you getting them to investigate the family information of those people? Chapter 898. Of course, I'm giving them a taste of their own medicine. Helian Wei Wei looked at him with a faint smile. There was nothing in her hand, but in Old Cat's eyes, he saw a faintly discernible scimitar. It was like a raging fire, incomparably beautiful. Humans, only when they become victims, do they realize how beastly their actions are. Old Cat's hand trembled. You mean, you're going to kill all their children? Boss Wei, listen to me. This is not like other places. If you do something like this, you won't be able to escape unscathed. Even ghosts can't handle such a big thing, unless you don't want to stay in the mainland. People in high positions don't allow anyone to challenge their authority. Authority? Helian Vivian's thin lips curved into a cold smile. Compared to countless parents who are looking for their children, these authorities are nothing in my eyes. It's the information age now. I have ways to make them pay with their lives and send them to prison. Old Cat opened its mouth and wanted to say something, but it was pushed to the side by Bailey Shangxia, who was behind it. The two little people's pockets were full. That wasn't enough. They also had many ancient diamonds in their hands. When the hell did they find so many things? Even when the higher-ups came to check, they didn't find these valuable things. This time, it was all taken away. Old Cat grabbed his black hair and watched the three figures disappear at the entrance of the internet cafe. He turned back and said to the front desk, "From today onwards, I won't receive any guests. If anyone asks about me, tell them that I went to Nepal for a trip. I'm leaving now. Book a ticket online for me. Hurry up." He didn't want to get involved in this mess anymore. He wanted to hide abroad and be quiet. Yuncheng was going to change, but he didn't know what it would be like. 3:40 a.m. Yuncheng train station. Everyone knew that there were no high-speed trains in the Yunnan-Guizhou area, only express trains. There were airports, but due to the weather, there were always all kinds of cancellations. Trains became the most popular means of transportation for most people. In particular, there were trains to Dali, so there were usually a lot of people at Yuncheng railway station. Probably because it was so close to the border, no matter how strict the inspection was, people of all walks of life would still show up. As soon as Helian Vivian and the two little ones entered the square of the train station, they were stared at. The ticket scalpers surrounded her, trying to separate her from the two little ones. Helian Vivian saw through the other party's trick. Not only was there not the slightest trace of worry on her face, but she also smiled even more beautifully. The scalpers looked at each other and continued to move forward. They were not afraid that there would be people from the legal world here. It was already 3:40 in the morning. At this time, those who were supposed to sleep would be asleep. They were more than enough to deal with a woman and two children. Especially the two children, as long as they took out the master's yellow talisman and pasted it on their backs, the two little guys would be unable to resist and faint at once even if they were strange. Thinking of this, the scalpers turned around and pasted the yellow talisman on Bailey Shangxia without warning. Then they bent down and tried to hold Bailey Shangxia up. But they didn't expect that. The yellow talisman burned in an instant, as if it had encountered a deadly enemy, and turned into ashes immediately. The child didn't change at all. Even the expression on her face was still cold and aloof. Her pair of eyes, which made people feel cold from the bottom of their hearts, became redder and redder, like flowing blood. All the scalpers couldn't help but take a step back. Their fingers were trembling. They simply changed their target and wanted to stick the yellow talisman on Qingchen. However, no one gave him the chance. Qingchen didn't wait for him to make a move. She kicked him fiercely in the waist. Taking advantage of the fact that the man was bending slightly, she used her right hand to push the man's knee with the edge of her palm. The force surged upwards and the man felt a wave of dizziness in his head. His knees gave way and he sat on the ground. Little Ching-Chin did not stop. His outstretched hand had already grabbed the wrist of the thin man behind him. His 5 fingers pressed down on the numb nerves, and the man immediately knelt on the ground. She was just a little girl, but she was already using the strength of a black belt in Taekwondo. The other side was even more dangerous. Only a bang was heard. The 2 people surrounding Bailey Shangxie were sent flying. One was foaming at the mouth, and the other was bleeding from the head. It was obvious that they couldn't get up. However, as a demon, Bailey Shangxie didn't have any intention of stopping. He stepped on the stomach of the big man who was trying to get up. Then, he used his free hand to roll up Ching-Chin's long sleeves. The scalpers who were beaten to the ground. Even if you want to beat someone up, you can't beat them up so arrogantly. Bailey Shangxie couldn't be bothered to talk to them. If he was unhappy, he planned to eat everyone's souls. Hellion Vivian reached out to stop him. If too many people die at once, it will attract attention. We are going to the train station. Someone will come to collect these people. Clap, clap, clap. Crisp applause sounded. Boss, where did you find such a little brat who can fight? S put his hands in his pockets and walked out from a corner with a faint smile on his face. L was behind him. Obviously, the 2 of them had already arrived. They originally wanted to make a move as soon as the fight started, but they didn't expect that there was no need for them to make a move. They all knew how strong Little Boss was. Little Boss was unintentionally a genius among geniuses. This genius was more or less influenced by the 6 of them for a long time. That was why he was so good at fighting. It was very difficult to find a genius with such a high IQ like Little Boss in the world. What they didn't expect was that this white-skinned, red-eyed brat looked even more lethal than their little boss. How did children grow up these days? Hellion Vivian smiled. I didn't find Shangxia. He is Ching-Chin's first friend who is the same age. Hearing this, S and L looked at Bailey Shangxia with even more vigilance. In the past, Little Boss never made friends. Although Little Boss had a good personality, the children who wanted to be friends with him had already lined up from one end of the train station to the other end. However, Little Boss had never been close to these children. Usually, he would only be with them. But now, Little Boss actually had a friend. What charm did this brat have that made Little Boss so familiar with him? Wait a minute, was it his imagination? Why did he feel that this brat looked a little like Boss when he smiled? Chapter 899. Alright, it's almost time for the train to arrive. Let's enter the station now. Hellion Vivian raised her hand and looked at the watch on her left wrist. Then, she took out a dagger from the pocket of her black windbreaker and inserted it into her backpack. She interrupted the fleeting thought of SL, you enter the station with me. You take the left side and I'll take the right side. There's an emergency, you 2 go through first. A weapon that could be touched like a dagger was much more dangerous than L's boots. This was undoubtedly the best way to divert the security personnel. At 3:45 p.m. sharp, everyone began to enter the station. As expected, when Hellion Wei Wei was passing through her luggage, her phone started beeping. The local police officer who was about to stop L glanced at him. He only flipped through his ID card and ticket twice and did not say anything more. Instead, he walked to Hellion Wei Wei's side and asked, "What happened?" "There seems to be something in the backpack." The security personnel looked back. "It looks like a knife." The local police officer looked at Hellion Vivian with a serious expression. "Open the bag." Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. She quietly pulled the zipper and there was a dagger inside. "Don't you know that this kind of thing isn't allowed on the train?" The local police officer picked up the dagger and looked at Helene Vivian with eyes that didn't relax. Helene Vivian shook her head and appeared very anxious. "I'm sorry, I really didn't know. This is a fruit knife. I usually use it to cut fruits. This kind of knife isn't allowed on the train. The length has exceeded the limit. Madam, you have to leave this fruit knife behind. Otherwise, you can't enter the station." The security personnel spoke. Helene Vivian naturally didn't object to this because she had already done what she wanted to do. The two little people didn't have much luggage. The older one held the younger one's hand and walked behind Helene Vivian with small steps. Their cool and soft appearance was very likable. After entering the train station, Helene Vivian went to the men's restroom. She looked around and grabbed the sign that said, "Cleaning is in progress," and placed it at the door. The two little ones were in charge of keeping watch. Those who came to the toilet were pointed in another direction by them. In the bathroom, the three of them looked at each other. Elle was not long-winded. He bent down and took off half of the parts on his boots. With a few clicks, the parts in his hands were assembled into a small silenced pistol. Helene Vivian's fingers were also moving. It was obvious that all the accessories on Elle's clothes had many uses. For example, his belt would become a long pipe after being straightened, and the clanging thing hanging around his neck was not an ordinary metal necklace, but a real sniper bullet. Among the three of them, S was in charge of the inspection while the other two were in charge of the assembly. A cracking sound was heard. Helene Vivian and Elle tilted their heads at the same time. They held the guns in their right hands and began to calibrate the shooting point. "It seems like the shooting distance has shortened. We don't need a long shooting distance on the train. Don't forget, we still have a sniper gun." The legendary sniper gun was being used as a seat by the two little ones. Qingshan stretched out her small hand and patted it. She tilted her small head. After hearing the sound, she patted it again. What a valuable little stool. Bailey Shangxia had played with all the weapons of human beings since he came to modern times. Of course, he knew that the thing they were sitting on was not so simple. However, sitting at the door of the restroom, it was easy to be regarded as a beggar child. They had been thrown coins by 6 people, which was an experience he had never had as a member of a noble race. Qingshan was also looking at the coins thrown down. She found that every time she patted the little stool she was sitting on, a coin would be thrown over. The K11 train from Yunqing to northern Tibet is now checking tickets. The ticket gate is gate 13. Yunqing 2. At the moment when the announcement sounded, Helene Vivian and Elle pushed the door open and walked out on time. Their backpacks were obviously heavier. However, checking tickets was different from entering the railway station. Checking tickets did not require checking luggage. They only needed to provide their ID cards and tickets. Helene Vivian and S looked at each other and entered the carriage with a backpack respectively. They were not in the same carriage. Instead, they locked their eyes on the dining carriage which had been contracted by others. Of course, there were people following them along the way. These people did not know what happened in the restroom. However, since they saw the fate of the scalpers, these people, as accomplices, thoroughly understood the strength of the other party. The two little ones were the most difficult to deal with. The other 3 people were just a little bit skilled. It should not be difficult to deal with them. After confirming this, they put down their luggage as soon as the train started. Their eyes did not leave Helene Vivian for even a moment. Of course, Helene Wei was aware of the unusual atmosphere around her. She did not have time to waste on these small fries. Inside the carriage, there were train attendants pushing carts selling snacks and drinks. The smell of instant noodles permeated the air. Ordinary people would not notice that there was something wrong with the train. More than 50 steps forward, they would reach the junction of the carriages. In order to teach them a lesson, these people would definitely block both sides of the road to prevent the attendants from discovering them. However, there was one thing that Lao Lu would definitely not choose to do: the human trafficking business on the train, just because of the convenient transportation. Once something went wrong here, all the people on the train would become his hostages. It seemed that they had to clean up from the beginning to the end. You are responsible for the carriages 1 to 10. We will solve the carriages 30 to 10. Finally, we will meet in the dining carriage. Helene Vivian pressed the earphones and said in a low voice, "By the way, check whether there are bombs in these carriages." Bombs? Qingshan reached out and tugged at the corner of Helene Vivian's clothes. "I will do it." Helene Vivian knew that her son had an amazing talent in this area. Without wasting any time, she directly tied the minesweeper to his wrist. "You know how to use it. Don't steal the chocolate." "Okay." Qingshan always looked like a little prince. Wearing the bracelet, he was led away by Bailey Shangxia. This time, no one dared to disturb them. After the people of the human trafficking group were taught a lesson, they all hid in their seats and did not dare to make a sound. They were afraid that they would be killed inexplicably. These two children were too strange. It was no different from seeing a ghost. Another minute passed. When they saw Helene Vivian and Elle walking towards them, they stood up one by one and followed behind them, pretending that nothing had happened. When they reached the hot water station, another group of people rushed out and surrounded Helene Vivian and Elle. Chapter 900. Each of these people was holding a small folding stool that could be bought everywhere in the train station. It was 10 yuan each, which was very cheap. Obviously, they couldn't bring guns on the train, so now they were using the folding stool as a weapon. The front and back of the pantry had been blocked. Even if they fought, their faces would be covered with blood, and the other party would only be punished for ordinary fighting. In Yuncheng, this kind of thing was very normal, and no one would investigate deeply. That was why Lao Lu's men were so unscrupulous. However, their mistake was that the people they met were her and Elle. Helene Vivian curled her lips and smiled. While the other party was about to hit her, she bent over and hit the person's chin with the gun in her hand. There was a bang. 2 of the people in the front row fell down at once. Everyone's face turned pale because of the pain. The people in the back row still wanted to move, but Helene Vivian raised her hand and pointed the gun directly at their heads. "If I were you, I would keep absolutely quiet from now on." Everyone who followed her, including the 2 on the ground, sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw the thing in her hand. The sweat on their foreheads kept pouring out, and they looked at Helene Vivian as if they were looking at a monster. This person, how on earth did this person bring a gun on the train? Except for Master Lu, no one in Yuncheng had this ability. Helene Vivian looked at them calmly and threw a bag of pills to them with her right hand. "This is a sleeping pill that can make you quiet for 4 hours. Take 1 pill each. You'd better move quickly. Usually, I don't have much patience at all." As she said, she pressed the gun against the person's head down. The man shuddered and swallowed the pill in his hand. When the others saw this, they didn't dare to delay and swallowed the pill with pain in the corner of their mouth. In less than 10 seconds, the 7 human traffickers all tilted their necks and fell asleep on both sides of the pantry. At this time, Elle, who was standing opposite to Helene Vivian, suddenly said, "Boss, there is a policeman behind you. He seems to have found something strange here and is coming over. He is 15 steps away from us. Dismantle the gun." Helene Vivian ordered. Elle immediately lowered his head, and a few rapid cracking sounds were heard. The policeman walked over quickly and directly put his hand on Helene Vivian's shoulder. "Miss, please hand over the thing in your hand." Helene Vivian looked up at Elle, then turned around and spread her hands with a smile. There was only a small steel pipe and a few rivets on it. The policeman frowned. What's this? Children like to play with toys. Helian Weiwei was very calm. My son likes to do handicrafts very much. However, unlike other children, the iron handicrafts made by other children were Iron Man robots, while the iron handicrafts made by Qingqin were K-47 sniper rifles. The policeman stretched out his hand and used his baton to poke the small steel pipe in Helian Vivian's palm. When he found that there was no problem, he said, "Go back to your seats and take care of your belongings. Don't gather in the pantry." Okay. Helian Vivian responded with a smile. She took a step back with her long legs and blocked a human trafficker who was sleeping behind her. The rest of the people were sitting on the ground in a sleeping posture. The policeman didn't suspect much. After all, there were no seats at this time. It was normal for people to sleep in this place. Looking at the back of the policeman, Helian Vivian pulled the person beside her over and pulled him to the side. She pulled out the earpiece on his ear and turned it off. Only the earpiece was left on her ear. Elle and Helian Vivian were very fast. This made all the human traffickers who thought that they were easy to deal with regret. Even Old Six himself didn't know that the people he had arranged in the carriage were being silently swept away. Unlike the other dining carriages, the decoration of this carriage was undoubtedly very luxurious. The floor was covered with a carpet that was very soft to step on. There was only a long wooden table in the middle of the dining room. Old Six sat on the chair next to the wooden table. He looked at the subordinate who came to report with a fierce gaze. Trash. All of you are trash. There were only 3 of them. You couldn't stop them. You even let them get on the train. Sixth master, it's not that we want to shirk our responsibility, but it's really because those 2 brats are too strange. The man said with a trembling voice. The yellow talisman pasted on them didn't have any effect at all. One of the children is very scary. Even his eyes are red. Red eyes? When the woman who was teaching the little boy to write heard this, she suddenly raised her head. Her long hair brushed past her waist. You mean that child's eyes are red? Yes, blood red. It's like the color of a rose when it blooms at its brightest. The man still felt a lingering fear when he thought about it. Old Six seemed to have noticed something. Master, do you know the origin of this brat? Blood-red eyes. He's either a vampire or a demon. The woman's voice was very calm. It doesn't matter. There are no purebred demons now. It's not that difficult to deal with small demons. What's going on with you? How did you provoke him? The man trembled and didn't dare to look at Old Six. Forget it. There's no point in asking this now. The woman stood up. Since it's just a little demon, and one raised by an exorcist, it won't be very aggressive. Go and take out all my yellow talismans. I have a way to deal with them. When Old Six heard this, he knew that they would definitely win. He was the only one who knew the woman's true identity. The devil's mother goddess was a protector who was enlightened by the Buddha. A real Buddha. Who in this world could defeat the gods and Buddhas? Old Six beamed with joy and said to his subordinates, "Don't worry about them. They are just a few small fries who just debuted. With the master in charge, their lives will end here. Everything will proceed according to the original plan. Go to the soft sleeper and bring the goods here one by one. Let the master take a look at them first. If the master is satisfied with them, keep them. If he is not satisfied with them, sell them immediately. There are 6 big buyers. Invite all of them here later." Yes. The man's mood also relaxed. He strolled to the soft sleeper and opened the doors of the buyers one by one. "Distinguished guests, the wonderful program that General Manager 6 has prepared for you is about to begin. Pa. In a high-roofed villa in Yun City. The butler in a tuxedo respectfully opened the cabin door of the plane. He lowered his head and said to the person walking from afar, "Master." Chapter 901. The strong airflow formed by the propeller blew Beligaju's pure silver hair. His fair and handsome face, which was like that of a vampire aristocrat, was completely exposed under the light. "Where is the train now?" His voice was as cold as the winter night. The rich businessman who was in charge of receiving him in Yungue district trembled and wiped the cold sweat on his forehead with a handkerchief. His suit, which was not fitting, was more wrinkled by the airflow. He even stuttered, it should have set off. "So," I asked, "where is it?" Unlike the rich businessman, Beligaju still stood tall and straight no matter how strong the airflow was. His fluttering silver hair did not reduce his elegance. Instead, it added a sense of beauty and oppression to him. When the rich businessman heard Beligaju ask for the second time, his body suddenly trembled. I think, it has left Yun City and entered the tunnel. The last stop of the train is North Tibet." Beligaju glanced at him coldly and stepped into the cabin with his long legs. "Locate the train. I want to see the front of the train in 8 minutes. Otherwise, Mr. Lee, you have to stay and be their dinner." The rich businessman trembled again. Looking at the black shadow behind the man with a pale face, he shouted anxiously, "Don't worry. We will definitely get there. We will definitely get there." Beligaju did not say anything and closed the cabin door with a swish. The interior of a private jet was more luxurious than that of an ordinary plane. Seeing the man sink into the soft seat, the rich businessman heaved a sigh of relief. He turned his head and hurriedly ordered his subordinates to do something. After thinking about it, he still felt that it was impossible. He asked his subordinates to take out their phones and call the sixth master. They were all rich people in Yun City. Of course, they would interact with each other. The rich businessman wanted to give the sixth master a warning and let him know that he was not to be trifled with. He had better restrain himself. But for some reason, he could not get through to the sixth master since just now. The rich businessman cursed in a low voice. Why didn't the sixth master answer the phone? Forget it. He had done what he should do. If he meddled a little more, he would definitely be killed by the other party. What did OL-6 do? How did he provoke this man? At the same time, in the 11th carriage of the train, Qingchen used her small hands to support herself as she struggled to crawl forward. When she finally got out of her seat, there was an orange peel in her hair. Qingchen didn't notice it herself. Her round eyes looked at Bailey Shangxie, who was looking out of the window. She was very puzzled. What are you looking at? There's a familiar scent in the night. Bailey Shangxie turned his head. When he saw Qingchen's appearance, he didn't say anything. He reached out and carried the little boy. Then, he began to tidy up his hair for Qingchen. His expression was still cold, but his posture of a good brother made the people around him melt. Qingchen saw that Bailey Shangxie was playing with his hair, so she lowered her head and clapped her hands. Then, she followed Bailey Shangxie's gaze and looked out of the window. The black crows are here again. They came with my father. Bailey Shangxie patted the dust on Qingchen's hands. I think he will be here soon. He will definitely take me back. Qingchen wasn't worried. With Beauty Vivian here, you can go home with me after the adults talk to them. How could he give up raising a little demon so casually? My father isn't a very reasonable person under normal circumstances. Bailey Shangxie always spared no effort when it came to slandering his father. He is very dictatorial. He often punishes me. When the black crows outside heard this sentence, they almost lost their balance and were killed on the train. Rumble. The wheels rolled over the tracks and the train began to enter a long tunnel. The surroundings were dark. But because of this, it was the most suitable for underground transactions. In the improved restaurant carriage of the train, Helene, Vivian and Nell slowly walked in. The carriage was dark everywhere. It was so dark that it was abnormal. Helene Wei furrowed her brows and subconsciously reached out to stop Elle. The Bluetooth earpiece in her ear could no longer make any noise, and the surroundings were very quiet. It was as if they didn't enter a carriage, but a long square box. If an ordinary person encountered such a situation, they would definitely panic. But Helene Vivian was still very calm. Elle just looked sideways and clenched the gun in his hand. Paw! All the lights were turned on at once. They shone on the two people's faces. It was very dazzling. Look at these little white mice who came from who knows where. Lu Yi held the cigar in his mouth and laughed at the people behind him. Everyone, unlike previous years, we have a little more entertainment program this year. The content of the program is to kill these little white mice who don't know the difference between life and death. We will let them know what happens to those who want to cut off our path to wealth. With that said, Lu Yi raised the gun in his hand and pointed it at Helene Vivian's head. Where should we start? Old Lu, it's a pity to kill such a beautiful woman. Why don't you sell her to me? I'll train her later. A fat middle-aged man with big ears smiled lecherously. But before he reached out, Elle raised his gun and shot him in the arm. It was a silenced gun. There was only a muffled sound when it was shot, but its power was no worse than any pistol. The middle-aged man immediately felt a heart-wrenching pain. He hugged his arm and almost fainted from the pain. The other people's faces suddenly changed. All of them wanted to take 2 steps back. They didn't expect that the other party had the ability to bring a gun on the train. Not only did these rich businessmen not expect it, but even Lu Yi, the tyrant of Yun City, narrowed his eyes. His eyes were full of vigilance when he looked at Elle. It was not for anything else, but because Elle pointed the muzzle at Lu Ye's head in the next second after he fired the gun. No matter who it was, in the face of such a life-or-death situation, they would feel nervous. However, Helene Vivian put one hand in her pocket and pointed the gun at a rich businessman with the other hand. She smiled faintly, as if the gun on her head didn't exist at all. Now it's 2 against 1. No matter how you look at it, our side is the popular one. Old Lu didn't expect that she would say such a thing. The woman in front of him was at most 26 years old, but she was calmer than him. Unconsciously, a thin layer of oily sweat appeared on his forehead. However, soon, he smiled with a faint sense of pride. Do you think you can survive because you have one more gun than me? Little girl, you are really naive. Chapter 902. Really? Helene Vivian clasped her fingers and said calmly, Sixth Master, do you think I won't shoot you? Do you want to have a try? What? The muscles on Lao Lu's face twitched, and his eyes were frighteningly dark. Since he became the tyrant of Yunqing, no one dared to threaten him like this. The rich businessman who was pointed at by Helene Vivian didn't even dare to move his hand. He growled in a low voice, Sixth Master, ask her what she wants. Hurry up and say yes. The rest didn't want to get into trouble. Sixth Master, we are here to talk business. Don't make it too big. The right thing to do is to find a way to solve it. After all, we are on a train. Guys, don't you trust me? Lao Lu glanced at them and raised a remote control. Little girl, do you know what this is? It's a bomb starter. The child you brought with you should still be in the other carriages, right? Apart from the dining room carriage, the rest of the carriages are all safe for me to control. If I kill the person in the carriage first, the person in that carriage will not survive. Of course, the life and death of those dirty migrant workers have nothing to do with you. But what about the two kids beside you? I have always been open-minded. If you put down the gun now, I can consider letting the two kids live. Little girl, now we are two against a carriage of people. You can try to shoot and see which side will suffer more losses. Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. Lao Lu obviously showed a sinister smile on his face. You want to fight with me? Why don't you decide who's in charge in Yun City? Someone, take away all the guns in their hands. I will kill whoever dares to come forward. Compared to Sixth Brother's provocation, Hellion Wei Wei's tone sounded like she was stating a fact. However, it was precisely because of her tone that no one dared to take a step forward. Sixth Brother sneered, good, very good. It seems that you want to watch those two brats get blown up. Who do you think will be blown up? A cool and soft voice came from behind the group of adults. Qingchen had a cold expression on her face as she walked forward shakily. Bailey Shangxie, on the other hand, looked like a little boss from Italy. His blood-red eyes made his face look dangerous. Hellion Qingchen raised the ball of string in her hand. If you're talking about these toys, I've already taken them apart. After that, he lowered his head and muttered, next time when you design a bomb, make it more complicated. Even a 3-year-old child can play with such a bomb. In the blink of an eye, Sixth Brother's face had turned green. He clenched his left hand tightly, not because of anything else, but because of the child's tone. He was very indifferent, as if he was not even comparable to a 3-year-old child. What was even more unacceptable to him was that he didn't believe that the bombs he had planted could all be defused by a little brat in such a short time. Even if the police came, they couldn't do it so quickly, unless they were from the special forces. Sixth Brother didn't believe it and pressed the remote control in his hand. But there was no sound. There wasn't even a response. Then, he pressed the second button, the third button, and the fourth button. None of them responded. Sixth Brother's lips turned white. The backup plan he had hidden for so many years was destroyed by two little brats. The rich businessmen also realized that something was wrong. They looked at each other and wanted to retreat. Sixth Brother chuckled at this time. This is good. Since you're all here, there's no need to rely on bombs to solve this. Demons, exorcists, even if you're evil spirits that crawled out of hell, Sixth Brother, can still ask someone to destroy your souls. As his voice fell, countless yellow talismans surged out from the deepest part of the restaurant's carriage. The yellow talismans seemed to be pulled by something and were respectively stuck to the four corners of the carriage, surrounding Hellion Vivian and Bailey Shangxie in the center. Then, an inch-long wooden puppet appeared in the thick black fog. The puppet was placed on the ground, its head turning back and forth as if there was a spirit in it. A slender figure walked out from the depths of the carriage. He wore a kasaya, and his face was cold and indifferent. He looked at Hellion Vivian, glanced at Bailey Shangxie, and finally fixed his eyes on Hellion Qingchen. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he stretched out his hand as if he wanted to touch Qingchen's face. It's been too long. It's really been too long since I met such a talented child. Little brat, come with me and be my son. I can give you whatever you want. Bang! Hellion Vivian was never one to waste words with someone who was trying to steal her son. She smiled and fired a shot. Jiu paused. After dodging the bullet, she immediately looked at Hellion Vivian with deep displeasure and frightening gloominess in her eyes. However, this was nothing to Hellion Vivian. Her smile didn't diminish even with the change in environment. What you like to do the most is to steal other people's children. It seems that the rumors are true. After so many years, you haven't been influenced at all. Since you know who I am, why don't you scram? Sneered. I don't want to kill people from the Pei family, but if you stop me from getting what I want, I'll make you regret stepping on this train immediately. Hellion Vivian's smile deepened. Who told you that I'm from the Pei family? Since you're not from the Pei family, it'll be easier to deal with you. In Jiao Er's heart, only the exorcist from the Pei family was worth mentioning. The rest were just stupid mortals. How could mere mortals fight a god? Without wasting any more time, Jiao Er pricked her fingertip and dripped the blood on the top of the puppet's head. A chilly wind immediately swept out from the puppet and spun in front of her. It seemed to be forming some kind of formation. Hellion Vivian frowned. She had heard that some tame head could use some evil ghost formations. They would carve a puppet and use a ghost fire to draw out the soul of a child. They would bind the child and use it as their own. Only the soul of a sick child could be used to create a living soul. It was best if the child had been tortured and died in pain. Only then would the formation's power be able to affect the child who was still alive in this world. Vaguely, a baby's chuckle could be heard coming from all directions. The chuckle seemed to come from a corner, but it also seemed to come from the puppet's body. It was extremely eerie. Chapter 903. Hellion Wei Wei reached out and pulled the two little ones to her side at the same time. Seeing this scene, the rich businessman's eyes were filled with excitement. It was the excitement of the unknown. It was too miraculous, really too miraculous. No wonder old Six had been doing better and better over the years. It turned out that the outside world was not exaggerating. With this master who could control the wind and clouds by his side, there was no need to worry about not making money quickly. The rich businessmen looked at each other and gave Old Six a thumbs up. Old Six still had a cigar in his mouth, and his face was full of pride. Just wait. In a while, this reckless rookie will know what regret is. She's just an ordinary criminal police officer who learned some Taoist techniques, and she dares to fight with me. She's tired of living. At this time, Old Six was sure that Hellion Vivian and the others would definitely die. Because no one could escape the array set up by the master himself. This was different from using yellow talismans to deal with people. This was a real battle. Ninth Ghost Mother looked at Qingchen as if she was her only target. Black fog rose up around them. It was different from the fragrance when the demon came out. Instead, the black fog had a dirty, bloody color to it. Following that, a ghostly figure leaped out of the puppet. It was a child less than 4 years old. Wearing a white mourning robe, its face was pale, and its scarlet tongue hung by its lips. It did not have the cuteness of a child at all. Instead, it was fierce and sinister, with an eerie ghostly aura. The light from the train penetrated its small body. After a moment of stalemate, the child immediately giggled, as if it had smelled something delicious. Its eyes suddenly shrank to the size of a needle, and it turned its head to pounce on Bailey Shangxia and Hellion Qingchen. Hellion Vivian was faster than it. She dodged and bent her fingers, blocking in front of it. Without any array, she did not even open her mouth. She just smiled and showed the scimitar in her hand. The little ghost paw that was waving in the air suddenly stopped, as if it had seen something extremely terrifying. The little ghost let out a shrill scream, turned around, and tried to escape, but before it could, Hellion Vivian raised her knife. The phoenix bone blade could slay all demons and devils in the world. Not to mention a little ghost that was similar to a resentful baby. Amidst the dazzling light, Ghost Child's figure seemed to have melted. He was completely devoured by the bone formation and disappeared. On the other hand, Bailey Shangxia and Hellion Qingchen were not affected at all, especially the latter. She even had a mocking smile on her face. Everyone was stunned, including Jiao, her ghost mother. The puppet on the ground cracked, and then the cracks became denser and denser. It was like a spider web that covered the entire body of the doll. With a crash, it broke into pieces on the ground. Sixth brother's eyes widened. Master, what's going on? Ordinary people could not see the phoenix bone blade in Hellion Vivian's hand. Only Jo, ghost mother, could see it, but she did not recognize what kind of blade it was. When she looked at Hellion Vivian, her eyes were full of vigilance. Who are you? Isn't it a little too late to ask who I am now? Hellion Vivian walked towards Jo, ghost mother. With every step she took, the scimitar in her hand shone brighter. I've said from the beginning that I don't want to be enemies with anyone. I just want a child to accompany me. You're the one who came to me. Jo, ghost mother, narrowed her eyes. Hellion Wei smiled. That's right. You've never made anyone your enemy. However, I'd like to ask you something. Did you ask for permission to steal someone else's child and make it your own? In our world, only the worst scumbags would do such a thing. What's the difference between you and them? Jo, ghost mother's face instantly twisted. What right do you have to talk about me like that? You're just a human. I gave you leeway, but you didn't cherish it. Good, very good. Let's see how you'll die. As soon as she finished speaking, an aura that was sharper than blades and colder than evil spirits burst out, filling the entire carriage in an instant. Hellion Vivian moved her palm, and an unknown wind gradually gathered in her left palm. However, at this moment, boom! A loud noise suddenly came from outside the carriage. People could only feel that something was pressing down on the roof of the car. Then, they heard the sound of an airplane's propeller. Everyone was stunned. Apart from Jo, ghost mother, who did not understand what was going on, even Hellion Vivian turned her head. She did not ask anyone to come to the train. She only asked Monkey and the rest to report that there was a child trafficker on the train after they snatched the second child. The current situation did not seem to be arranged by the other party. What's going on outside? Sixth brother was already in a bad mood. He did not expect such a mess to happen. He grabbed the subordinate closest to him. Why did the train stop? Ah! I'm asking you, what's going on? Where's the conductor? Get him over here. Sixth master. Someone ran over in a hurry. Someone parked the plane on the train carriage. It's a private plane. Sixth brother slapped him. Why are you so anxious over a private plane? It's not like the Interpol is here. Wait a minute. Look. What is that? A wealthy merchant stretched out his hand and pointed at the ink-like dark night with a trembling finger. Outside the train, there were countless black crows flying in the air. Bailey Shangxia also saw this scene. Thinking about the noise just now, he knew who had come. Sixth brother sneered. I want to see who dares to set up a private plane on my territory. All of you, get on the roof of the train. The rich businessmen did not dare to go. They felt that there was no need to get involved in this mess. Hellion Vivian did not move either. She knew that sixth brother would come back soon. To be able to make so many black crows move at once, it was definitely a pure-blooded high-level demon. Such a demon was more powerful than Jo, ghost mother. He would definitely be able to deal with sixth brother. However, no matter how powerful he was, those who did not care about the feelings of the children and only cared about the women were usually scumbags. Swoosh. The door of the train was pushed open by someone. Old 6 men were climbing out of the carriage one by one. On the roof of the car, the propeller of the private jet was still rotating. The cabin door was pulled open and Bailey Jiaju walked out slowly from inside. His straight legs, pure black suit, and quicksilver-like hair, all of which showed his nobility. Chapter 904. At this time, even the ordinary people sitting in the train heard the loud noise on the roof of the train. Everyone stuck to the window and looked out. In addition, this train was one of the few green trains in the mainland. There were only a few left, and one of them was in Yun City. Unlike other fast trains, the windows of the green train could be opened. The younger people couldn't suppress their curiosity at all. Taking advantage of the panic, they opened the window directly and stuck their heads out. It didn't matter if they didn't, but once they did, they were dumbfounded. What is that? A plane. A plane parked on the train. You're not mistaken, are you? I'm not short-sighted. If you don't believe me, you can see for yourself. The commotion in the carriage was even greater. Even the girls leaned on the window and looked out. The strong airflow formed by the propeller of the plane was not easy to ignore. All the people on the train went crazy. They took out their mobile phones and began to take photos and post on Weibo. The content of Weibo was nothing more than, "Have you ever seen such a rich person? He directly drove a private plane onto the train. There seems to be a figure on the side of the plane. He looks very tall. He must be very handsome. Didn't anyone notice that the moon seems to be particularly round today? And forget about the appearance of a private plane. Why is it someone else who drove the plane and not me? Overbearing president. He's definitely an overbearing president. Count how many people in the country have private planes. If the other party is very handsome, I'll jump out of the train now." The Weibo content of netizens ignited the entire internet with absolute popularity. It attracted the attention of the local authorities without anyone's notice. For a time, all the media were reporting on this matter. Even if it was late at night, it still became the headlines that they would break tomorrow. However, it was also because it was late at night. The local authorities could quickly take measures. Before more people saw the news, they directly blocked the words, "private plane parked on the roof of the train." They also gave an official explanation that the private plane was forced to land because it ran out of fuel in the air. They also very considerately attached a picture, hoping that people would not spread false rumors. All the Weibo posts that the people on the train had posted were all blocked for various reasons. After controlling the public opinion, the person in charge of the network immediately dialed the number of a superior in Yun City. And at this time, on the roof of the carriage, when Bailey Jiaju's shockingly handsome face appeared before everyone's eyes, everyone stiffly sucked in a breath of cold air. As he walked, the black feathers fell down one by one, landing beside his feet. When Old Six saw this, he felt that something was wrong. He reached out and pulled one of his subordinates to block the attack while he took a step back. The steward who came up with Old Six was the man who carried Bailey Shangxia and the others away. He didn't know what happened in the dining room carriage just now, so he thought that the other party was here to pick a fight. His voice was very loud. "Do you know whose territory this train belongs to? Why did you park your plane here?" Baligaju didn't say anything. He suddenly took out his hand from his pocket. The black shadow behind him had already raised a pistol, as if he already knew that the man would use it. His hands did not stop at all. Bang! A gunshot rang out. The steward reached out and covered his chest. Blood spurted everywhere. All the people on the roof of the carriage were stunned. When the man lay down, they realized that the guy opposite them was not only rich, but also very difficult to deal with. No. He was very difficult to deal with. Old Sixth and the others also had guns, but on the mainland, even the fiercest madman would be afraid of shooting. Unlike Baligaju, human beings were just some food that was not so delicious in his eyes. When he shot, he was even more casual. He elegantly fiddled with the gun in his hand and pointed the muzzle at a slightly strong man. Only then did the people realize that the targets he shot were all locked at the entrance of the carriage. In other words, he would take the life of anyone who stood in his way. They had imagined that the other party would beg for mercy with soft words, and there was no excitement in his voice. Because after he fired the gun, all the bullets were accurately held in the palm of the man's hand. Then, all the bullets were released. Bang! 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 They fired a few bullets, and the number of people lying next to them increased. The human trafficker who abducted Bailey Shangxia and the others lay on the ground. Blood kept bubbling out of his mouth. When his consciousness began to fade, he heard someone say, "Master, the position of the little master has been determined. He is in the 10th carriage." Suddenly, the man smiled. His smile was very presumptuous, revealing a demonic chill that made people shudder. "You guys stay and be responsible for cleaning up. You can eat whatever you want." At that moment, the people on the roof of the carriage noticed the black fog behind the man. Pairs of blood-red eyes were hidden in the night, as if they could devour everything. The human trafficker looked at the behemoth that was getting closer and closer to him. He wanted to scream, but found that his throat could no longer make a sound. Only blood kept flowing out. That stinging feeling of being chewed up made him regret abducting those two little boys out of all the people he could have abducted. He turned around and looked at the entrance of the carriage, only to find that their boss had long disappeared. Fear invaded all his cells like a tide. He struggled to crawl back, but could not escape the fate of being eaten. The night surged with the smell of blood. Just as Hellion Vivian expected, OL-6 had just poked his head out, but he quickly retreated back into the carriage. His expression was extremely ugly, as if there was a scourge on the roof of the carriage. Even his hands were trembling. Without thinking, he grabbed the corner of Ninth Ghost Mother's clothes. "Master, there is a monster outside." "No, it is not a monster. It is a group of monsters. Calm down." Ninth Ghost Mother also realized that something was wrong, but no matter how powerful the demons were, they were no match for her. Hearing Ninth Ghost Mother's voice, OL-6 only remembered the surrounding people and the rich merchants. He did not speak, but his eyes were more alert than ever. He pulled his gun and stared at the entrance of the carriage, waiting for someone to appear so that he could shoot immediately. "He must be scared by my father." When Bailey Shangxia spoke, there was a unique mockery in his voice. "My father is indeed not handsome. Hellion Weiwei. Scumbag. Not only is he not handsome, he's hopeless. He's here." Bailey Shangxia looked at the entrance of the carriage and narrowed his eyes. The cold, thin, and tall figure in the night walked over step by step as the demon chanted. Chapter 905. Bang! OL-6 pulled the trigger without hesitation. One shot wasn't enough, so he fired 3 shots in a row. The rich merchants were completely dumbfounded by the scene in front of them. It wasn't because of OL-6's 3 shots. It was because of the man in front of them. Their fingers were trembling, and their eyes widened as they watched in disbelief as the man held the bullets in his hand, and then crushed them bit by bit. The lights in the car suddenly lit up, and it was so blinding that it hurt their eyes. Hellion Vivian's watery eyes met the man's side profile. What emerged from the darkness was a handsome face that could topple all living things. Peach blossom eyes, a handsome nose, and seductive lips. It was a face that she was so familiar with, and missed so much. Guilt, surprise, excitement, and many other emotions entangled in her chest, and even her heart started to ache. At that moment, Hellion Vivian's mind was completely blank. "This is your father, that scumbag." Qingchen was still asking her little friend in a soft voice. Bailey Shangxia was very cool. Yes. Hellion Vivian. You never told me that this scumbag was His Highness, okay? Son. I heard that someone wants to talk to me. Beligaju hadn't seen Hellion Vivian in the formation yet. The reason he came was because someone sent him a message, and the general content was that he was a bastard for abandoning his son for a new lover. In reality, Beligaju didn't really care what the humans thought of him. When he heard this kind of message, he knew that a certain brat was acting and telling stories to gain sympathy. He didn't get tired of this kind of trick, and he was tired of dealing with it. That was why he personally came to make a certain brat who liked to go against him obediently return to the demon world. Bailey Shangxie, are you coming out now, or I'll beat you out of here? Beligaju's tone was very casual, and there was a unique coldness in his voice. It was as if the rich merchant standing in front of him didn't exist, as if he only had eyes for his son. He just stood there like that in the square surrounded by people. His line of sight was blocked by people, so he couldn't see Hellion Vivian and the others. Furthermore, the arrogant His Highness had never thought that the person he was looking for would appear here. He no longer had the patience to face humans. Ever since Hellion Vivian left, he had never looked at anyone else. I'll count to 3. Beligaju loosened the powder in his palm. He lowered his eyes and bit the leather glove on his left wrist. He smiled dangerously. 1. Tap. Bailey Shangxie pushed one of them away and walked out with a cool expression on his face. I want human rights. You can't ignore human rights. You're not human. Why do you need human rights? Beligaju's words made little Shangxie speechless. He was indeed not a human. However, he didn't give up. Instead, he curved his thin lips and revealed his little white teeth. He smiled like a demon. You once said that as long as there's a human who isn't afraid of me and is willing to be my friend, I can go to their house as a guest. It seems that you found a backer. Beligaju sneered. Who is it that's so unafraid of death? Bailey Shangxie stepped back again. Then, he held Hellion Vivian's hand and walked forward with small steps. Qinchin was also helping. Her small hands pushed Hellion Vivian forward with all her might. Beauty Qinchin, hurry up. Negotiate with this scumbag and ask him to let us have Shangxie. Her wish to raise a little devil must be realized. Beligaju didn't care much at first. He just stood there, wearing an ascetic black suit. His eyes were cold, and there was a hint of laziness in the corners of his eyes. However, when he heard the 2 words, Wei Wei, he suddenly tilted his well-defined face. His eyes, which were as deep as the sea, locked onto one point. In an instant, flames spread across his eyes like a prairie fire. He stared at Hellion Vivian's face. The possessiveness in his eyes became even more intense. It was so deep that it was almost twisted. He almost lost control. Without giving anyone time to react, Beligaju's figure flashed and appeared in front of them. Then, he grabbed Hellion Vivian's arm. His fingers exerted force and pulled Hellion Vivian into his arms. Bailey Shangxie didn't say anything. Hellion Vivian had just said the word, I. Beligaju's kiss had already landed. He held her tightly in his arms with one hand and pressed the back of her head with the other. Just like that, under the watchful eyes of everyone, he kissed Hellion Vivian's lips fiercely. The 2 little ones who were still standing at the side were stunned. Hellion Qinchin glanced at Bailey Shangxie. It was as if she was asking, does your father often do this? Does he kiss anyone he sees? Bailey Shangxie frowned coolly. He knew his father very well. For the past 3 years, any woman who tried to get close to him usually didn't have a good ending. But now, he actually took the initiative to kiss a woman. Unless, Bailey Shangxie was stunned. His demonic eyes were slightly opened. That usually cool little face had lost its evil look. He stared blankly at Hellion, Vivian and Beligaju. He didn't know how to react at all. Hellion Vivian had already lost the ability to speak. Her slightly open mouth was sucked in by someone's mouth. Her teeth were gently licked by the tip of his tongue. There was a numbing electric sensation. Gradually, Beligaju's grip became gentler. His teeth rubbed against her lips. The temperature was like ice that had just been scooped from the North Pole. It was bone-piercing cold. His mouth was mixed with the fragrance of tea, and it seeped into his tongue. As the oxygen was sucked away, Hellion Wei Wei had no place to put her hands. Naturally, she wrapped them around his waist. Her ears listened to the familiar and powerful heartbeat. The corners of her mouth curved into a big arc as she arrogantly kissed him back. Beligaju paused. He lowered his head and looked at Hellion Vivian for a while. He suddenly smiled and moved his arms. In an even more possessive and powerful manner, he held her firmly in his arms. Bailey Shangxia's thoughts were scattered. The expression on his face wasn't that dazed anymore, but it was a little strange. Especially when he saw Qingchen beside him, that strange expression became even stronger. Qingchen didn't know what the other party was thinking. Just as her small eyebrows raised, Bailey Shangxia picked her up and patted her head. Qingchen covered her head with her two small hands. She looked at Bailey Shangxia in confusion. What's wrong? Let's run away from home together. Bailey Shangxia said seriously, if we're late, there's a high possibility of domestic violence. Imperial Father likes to hit people. Especially when I slandered him in front of Imperial Mother. He'll definitely take revenge. Qingchen. Chapter 906. Fire Qilin, who came in behind Beligaju, naturally saw this scene. He didn't dare to imagine that the princess would appear here. They came here to find the little master. Who would have thought that there would be such an additional surprise? He found her. Fire Qilin and Azure Dragon no longer had to worry that the master would become more and more ruthless, or even start a massacre. How did the princess get together with the little master? And who was the little person in the little master's arms? Fire Qilin had a lot of questions to ask, but it was not a good place to ask. Qingchen, who was in the arms, stretched out her little hand and pulled Bailey Shangxia's ear. Didn't you say that your father has been looking for your mother? Bailey Shangxia's voice was a little vague. She is my mother. Qingchen, ? Your mother is my mother. Bailey Shangxia turned his face away silently. Qingchen's eyes widened. We are brothers. You are my younger brother. Bailey Shangxia touched Qingchen's head again. His voice was very cool, and he looked very like an older brother. After a long time, Qingchen asked calmly. So the scumbag you are talking about is my father? That's right. Bailey Shangxia picked up the little girl again. He was not very tall, and he always liked to walk with Qingchen in his arms. One small step after another, it was domineering and cute. Beligaju, of course, heard the words of the professional who had been cheating for thousands of years. However, these were not important. The only important thing was that he finally found the stupid woman in his arms. The beast that had been screaming crazily in his heart was finally appeased, restrained, and locked back into the cage at this time. Because even Beligaju himself didn't know if he couldn't find this stupid woman on this trip to Huaxia. Would he want to destroy everything again? From the beginning, it was just like what those gods said. She didn't belong to him. But so what? If he wanted something, he would get it even if he had to kill gods and Buddhas. It was just that when he was in the heavenly Tao, he had to admit that this person had a huge influence on him. He began to be afraid of losing her. He wanted to keep her by his side forever. It would be best if he could break her dazzling phoenix wings. Later, the two of them signed an agreement. He began to tell himself that he had to take it slow. Only by taking it slow could he completely obtain her. As the days passed, Baligaju became more and more greedy for the feeling of being together. But at that time, he didn't know how Hellion Vivian treated him. He thought that he was the only one who put in the effort in that agreement. Later on, she reincarnated in the human world and her Buddhist position was restored. He had learned to trust, and he wanted to bind Hellion Vivian even tighter. Bailey Jia Ju began to not care too much about it and stopped wantonly killing and tormenting. He was willing to be a good person in the eyes of humans. As long as she didn't leave, however, she still left. Since that was the case, what difference did it make to him whether the entire world was dead or alive? No one could empathize with his feelings when he saw Tianji calculate that she was in another time and space. From despair to hope, from hope to disappointment, and from disappointment to finally reunite. For 3 whole years, the agreement between him and her had been crushed in the gap of time and space. He could only search for a needle in a haystack like this. From England, he found China and crossed the sea. At last, he didn't let down Buddha and Qing. Baligaju raised his hand slightly and turned it to touch Gubai's waist. Then, he slowly slid his hand under her windbreaker and gently touched her waistline. Hellion Vivian trembled and reached out to hold him down. Bailey Jia Ju laughed softly, his finger stopped at the original point. So, you're the one who sent me a message and spurned me between the lines. Hellion Vivian was very serious. This is a beautiful misunderstanding. Oh. Baligaju's thin lips curved. Misunderstanding. But you really want to support Shangxia, don't you? Hellion Vivian wanted to see a certain scumbag and teach him a lesson with his fists, but she didn't expect that the scumbag would be him. Since you want to support others, you have to have better endurance. Baligaju smiled evilly and gently. It seems that your husband has something to do in the next few days, which is to train your waist strength. Hellion Vivian. Based on her understanding of His Highness, training his waist strength was definitely not as simple as it sounded on the surface. At this time, Man S in a suit, who was in charge of keeping watch, kicked open the other door of the restaurant. As soon as he entered, he found that there was something wrong with young L's expression. S originally wanted to tell Hellion Vivian that the news of the private jet landing on the top of the train had attracted the attention of the high-ranking people outside of Yunqing. In less than 10 minutes, the special forces would be dispatched, and Hellion Vivian would deal with it as soon as possible. But when he followed L's gaze, he was completely stunned. Who was that man who didn't look like a real person and looked more like a comic cosplayer? Was he filming a vampire movie now? Or was he still in love with a ghost? But even so, why was the person he was in love with Big Boss? What was going on? S didn't stop and immediately pointed his gun at Baligaju, but his words were directed at Hellion Vivian. Big Boss, what's going on? Baligaju, who was pointed at by a gun, turned his head and glanced at S, as if he was unhappy that S disturbed him. S suddenly shuddered. Moreover, he saw that his big boss didn't shake off the man's hand, but instead wrapped her arms around the man's waist. Fuck, this is getting weirder and weirder. What was going on? Bang! S didn't shoot, but someone else did. It was Old Sixth. He chose to shoot at this time, not because he suddenly didn't fear Baligaju anymore. Instead, he was calculating the time. Those high-ranking people would definitely send troops. When that time came, this train would be his world. Moreover, the master had said that even if a powerful demon appeared, she would make them die miserably. Old Sixth's eyes were gloomy, and there was a hint of pride in the corners of his eyes. So the two of you know each other. Good, very good. Then I'll get rid of both of you. As he spoke, he glanced at the Japanese goddess. Because the Devil Mother Goddess wholeheartedly wanted to obtain Enchanting, she wanted to kill his biological mother even more. Moreover, these people really didn't put her in their eyes. He was just a high-level demon with some magical power. Did he really think that he could compete with the gods? Ridiculous. Chapter 907. With that thought in mind, the Japanese goddess raised her hand and countless wooden puppets flew out from behind her. Each of them seemed to be pulled by an invisible string, their limbs were stiff and their expressions were indescribably strange. Upon closer inspection, those wooden puppets seemed to have a life of their own. Even the eyes of those who were staring at them could move back and forth. That scene was extremely eerie. The merchants could not help but take a step back. However, those wooden puppets did not seem to be able to differentiate between friend and foe. Whoever moved their eyes, they would turn towards that person. That faint green light was like a cat in the night, whoever it stared at would die in the next second. Even the sixth brother did not expect that the great master's array this time would be like this. Those wooden puppets were too aggressive, to the point that it made people feel uneasy. Not knowing when it started, the black fog around them started to increase, so much so that everyone started to panic. Except for Helene Vivian and her family. Everyone felt an indescribable sense of restraint and coldness. Especially those merchants who had done all sorts of heinous things. Their hands and feet felt like they were being held by something. In the beginning, they did not know what that thing was. When they lowered their heads to look, they realized that it was not something that was holding on to their feet, but little white hands. Those were the hands of children. There was no mistake. Those were the hands of children that they had sold before. Because the sixth brother was standing beside the Japanese goddess, no child dared to approach him. Hence, he did not feel the fear of the merchants. Instead, the expression on his face became even more excited. His eyes looked at Beligaju and the rest, his eyes gleaming with arrogance and viciousness. This is the result of offending me. All of you can go to hell. As the sixth brother's voice fell, the wooden puppets around him flew up. Every pair of eyes was staring at the center of the room. Such a thick aura of resentment, even a demon would be corroded by it. Furthermore, the array she used this time had included the Sanskrit of Buddha. In the lower realm, no one would be able to resist such power. The corners of the Japanese goddess's mouth curled up into a cold smile. The puppet that was originally suspended in mid-air suddenly stood upright. Its eyes were shining brightly as it swept towards the direction of Beligaju and the rest. Whether it was the sixth brother or the Devil Mother Goddess herself, both of them had unparalleled confidence in their own formations. They felt that there was no way a devil could defeat the gods and Buddhas. This time, the other party was dead for sure. However, in the next second, this idea of theirs was ruthlessly slapped in the face. Because in just an instant, all the puppets near Beligaju were crushed into powder. He didn't even move his hand. He just stood there with a slight smile on his face. However, the bound spirits who wanted to reach out their hands felt an overwhelming murderous intent from that smile. They had no time to escape. With Beligaju at the center of the circle, the surrounding air seemed to have been sucked into a vacuum in an instant. Something dark suddenly rushed out from behind him. Only then did the Hariti Mother Goddess realize that what was behind him was not the black fog emitted by the formation. Instead, it was a black hole formed by hundreds and thousands of demons. You, who exactly are you? The expression on the Hariti Mother Goddess's face changed completely. She had never seen anyone with such great power. He could blur the boundaries of the three realms and walk in the mortal world without being controlled by the gods and Buddhas. He even brought so many demons with him. Not to mention a devil, even she, who had the status of a Buddha, could not command all the demons in the world. Unless, impossible, this was impossible. It was impossible for her to meet the long-lost Heavenly Lord in the lower three realms. However, what happened next shattered the Hariti Mother Goddess's fantasy. The thick black fog spread, surrounded by crow feathers. Beligaju slowly walked over. With every step he took, an enchanting devil's snare flower bloomed under his feet. This was a spectacle that could only be seen by the heavenly axiom above 9,000 feet. For the first time, the Hariti Mother Goddess knew what regret was. Because she never thought that she would see the Heavenly Lord here. The thousand Buddha shield that was destroyed by him that year was still in Buddhism. Even the Venerable One was not his match. In the entire Buddhism, perhaps only Phoenix could fight him. She remembered now. Once, when the blood sea was cleared, Buddhism held a banquet. This man also appeared on Mountain Tenya in such a posture. Silver-haired, black-robed, with a smile on his face. Behind him were countless demons. At that time, her Buddhist status was low, so she could not see his face clearly. However, the Devil Mother Goddess clearly remembered the scene that no one in Buddhism dared to look back on until today. Leave this place. Leave this place. The Hariti Mother Goddess only had this thought left. However, before she could move her legs, the tearing pain in her body suddenly attacked her. The pain that spread through her veins made it impossible for her to move. She only felt that her heart was twisted into a ball and could explode at any time. I hate being disturbed the most, especially after I found her. Beligaju bit off his black gloves. His thin lips moved slightly, and his eyes that were full of golden marks suddenly narrowed. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking. Hariti Mother Goddess looked at Beligaju, who was standing in front of her, in horror. Her Buddha bone was forcefully taken away just like that. Without the Buddha bone, Hariti Mother Goddess would no longer be protected by Buddha. The children that she had once eaten. At that moment, all of them let go of the hands that were holding on to the rich merchant. They emerged from the dark corners and slowly pulled Hariti Mother Goddess into the flames of hell. This time, Hellion Vivian did not expiate. This was because the vengeful spirits that had been bound could not be reincarnated even if they were expiated. Especially these children who had not sinned at all, but they were treated in such a way. Some of them could not even see their mothers and fathers for a year, 2 years, or even 10 years. They had consciousness, but they were all bound in wooden puppets. This was their resentment. No one would want to stop such resentment, including Hellion Vivian. She wanted them to solve it in their own way. She wanted to pull Hariti Mother Goddess into the bottomless abyss and let her have a taste of what they had once suffered. Children were that simple, but there were people who had used their simplicity countless times as a tool to hurt them. These people, no matter who they were, she had to get to the bottom of it. Chapter 908. This was their resentment. No one would want to stop such resentment, including Hellion Vivian. Children were that simple. However, there were people who used their simplicity as a tool to hurt them countless times. No matter who these people were, she had to get to the bottom of it. Right at this moment. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside. Suit Man S pressed the blue headset on his ear and looked up at Hellion Vivian. Boss, the higher-ups are here. They should be the local armed forces. Just as S finished speaking, a deafening loudspeaker sounded. To the people inside, listen up. You have been surrounded. It seems that no matter in America or China, this excuse will not change. S laughed. Obviously, he was very experienced in dealing with such situations. Boss, what should we do next? Should we retreat immediately or wait for them? Hellion Wei Wei smiled meaningfully. Let's not do anything but dismantle the pistols first. According to their plan, the flying tigers should have already boarded the train and the other carriages. The broadcast was just to distract us. This means that they already have a plan. This time, we won't wait for them, nor will we retreat immediately. We'll bring all the children out of the sleeper carriage and let them see what kind of deal is going on this train. Not retreating. As Suitman S spoke, his eyes glanced in the direction of Bailey Jiaju. Then, he said quietly, "Then, how do you explain why the plane was parked on top of the car?" Helene Vivian looked at him. "His son is missing. It is natural for a father to look for him." "Son. Father." The man in the suit paused abruptly. He looked at Bailey Shangxie, then at Bailey Jiaju. Suddenly, he recalled the scene he saw when he came in. Finally, he rested his gaze on his boss and said, "It can't be what I think it is, right?" His boss had never allowed a man to question her in public. However, no matter how powerful the other party was, Boss Wei should be able to avoid him. However, his boss tolerated his kiss. After calming down, Suitman S realized that there must be something between his boss and the other party. "It's exactly what you think it is." Helene Wei's expression was very calm. Suitman S's facial expression began to become complicated. He couldn't help but feel that the little bro brought back looked a little like his boss right from the start. It turned out that he was not mistaken. All of this was real. In other words, the man that boss had flirted with was here. I'll say it again. The people inside, listen up. You've already, the noise outside the car continued. The man in the suit, however, felt as if his entire body had been smitten. No. He had to let Monkey and the others know about this first. Thus, the man in the suit pressed the button on his ear as he walked to the sleeper compartment. The man who was flirted with by the boss is here. When Monkey heard the news, he was teaching the 3 children he had brought over how to play video games. He paused and immediately jumped up. What? Where is it? Aren't you on the train? Yes, it was on the train. You should have seen the news about someone parking a plane at the train stop. The man who drove the plane was the one who slept with the boss, the man in the suit said firmly. Old looked like a bear and had similar thoughts. How much hatred do you think he has? In order to get even with boss, this man actually drove a plane and chased after us. Helene Vivian, speaking of which, it was because of little boss that the man discovered boss's existence. The more the man in the suit spoke, the wider his smile became. I think boss would never have thought that the other party's father would be the man that she slept with. Oh right, you should remember the little boy who was abducted with little boss, right? That's him. Every dog has its day. Didn't boss say that the other party was a scumbag? Now that she has seen him in person, hee. Helene Vivian reached out and pressed the earpiece. If you say one more word, your commission will be reduced by half. Hearing this, Monkey immediately gloated. Commission should have been reduced by half long ago. But boss, did you really sleep with the father of the little boy that you asked me to investigate? Helene Vivian heard this and raised her eyebrows. Participating in discussions that have nothing to do with the mission will result in a 0 commission. Monkey's smiling face immediately froze and the corners of his mouth twitched. The mastermind's commission will only be reduced by half, but the accomplice's commission will be reduced to 0. This is how I treat you. Helene Wei simply looked at her own happiness, completely emitting the aura of a queen. As for Old Six, who had seen Beligaju's destructive power with his own eyes, he grabbed the door and locked himself in another compartment. However, he was still worried and looked at the dining compartment vigilantly. He dragged his long legs and walked forward step by step, desperately calling for help from the special forces. Right now, Six would rather be captured than be with this group of monsters. That's right, in Old Six's mind, Hellion Vivian and Beligaju had already become monsters. He had never seen a person being followed by a group of monsters. If it wasn't for the fact that Old Sixth had experienced a lot of things and was vicious and merciless to a certain extent, if it were anyone else, they would have been scared speechless. Therefore, when a group of people came in with rifles, he cooperatively raised his hands and took a step forward, hiding behind the armed forces. His eyes were still filled with fear as he looked at Beligaju. He even grabbed the clothes of the armed forces leader and kept saying, "Save me, those monsters want to kill me. They want to kill me." At the same time, the armed forces who did not know what was going on immediately took a step forward and swept the area with their guns, protecting Old Six. Old Six had achieved his goal because even if the enemy was very strong, there were people sent by the higher-ups to block him. Moreover, as long as he was caught, he would be secretly protected. These people wanted to investigate him, but they wouldn't be able to find anything. As for that monster, he didn't believe that the monster would dare to cast a spell in front of the armed forces. Therefore, the armed forces' arrival wasn't to catch him, but to protect him. Old Six thought that no matter what, the enemy was still too inexperienced. They didn't know the twists and turns inside out and thought that he could be killed so easily. He had been in this line of work for so many years. If something could happen, it would have happened long ago. Since they were safe until now, it proved that they had someone backing them. In China, having someone was more useful than having anything. The living could become dead, and the dead could become alive. For the readers, it's too sleepy. Moi, good night, continue tomorrow. Chapter 909. As long as he didn't admit to anything, the people behind him would protect him. In the end, the one who would suffer would not be him, but the other party's people. Sixth brother never doubted this. What he was afraid of was Beligaju himself. Fortunately, this group of people rushed in. Otherwise, he would have peed his pants. Hellion Vivian also knew that with such a big thing happening, there was no doubt that they would all be taken away. She had been waiting for this moment. Before boarding the train, she anonymously reported the situation on the train to the relevant authorities. However, it was obvious that it didn't have any effect. These human traffickers still did what they were supposed to do. This made Hellion Vivian realize that if there wasn't a major incident, there wouldn't be any impact. They boarded the train to create something that could attract attention in the restaurant's carriage. However, before they had the time to do so, His Highness arrived in his private jet and parked it on the roof of the train. This was simply advertising for the train. In this way, it would be difficult for the higher-ups not to notice. This was the effect that Hellion Vivian wanted. Because some things had to wait until the fire could no longer be contained before all the people who should be taken down would be taken down. Therefore, when someone rushed in, Hellion Vivian took the lead and raised her arms. She even held His Highness' hand with one of her hands and made him raise it with her. Don't blame Weiwei for thinking too much. His Highness would really kill all the people who came in, regardless of whether they were good or bad people. His Highness was very satisfied that Hellion Vivian took the initiative to hold his hand. The corners of his mouth curled up as he tilted his head and glanced at Hellion Vivian. Hellion Vivian continued to raise His Highness' hand and stared at it. Little Shangxia and Qingchen took a second look and followed Hellion Vivian's example. They raised both of their little hands. The two little ones were not very tall. After all, they were only 3 years old. They looked even cuter when they raised their hands. However, little Shangxia's face was too cool. When he looked at those people, he didn't look like he was surrendering. Instead, he looked like he was evaluating whether the food was delicious. Beligaju was too familiar with that kind of gaze. He turned his head and gave Bailey Shangxia a warning look. I've told you about the dining etiquette. It seems that you've forgotten it because of the train journey today. What dining etiquette? Qingchen was very curious. Her two little hands were still in the air as she turned her little head to ask. Bailey Jiaju glanced at his youngest son, whom he had never met before, and said in a leisurely manner, "You can't eat anything that's been soaked in soil or sweating. You'll be the same in the future." This sentence actually sounded very normal. But if the food being eaten was a human, then, Qingchen began to feel conflicted. She silently looked at the roof of the car. The person who broke in didn't seem to expect to see two children in this place. At first, he was stunned. Then, he heard them talking about food. He frowned and pressed the earpiece. Reporting, there are two children in the car. No, it's not just two children. There are more children in the sleeping compartment. The Special Forces soldier who spoke was already stunned. This was because he had never seen so many children in a car before. Every one of them was still in the same posture as before. This was because their training taught them to be calm no matter what situation they were in. However, they felt an unprecedented shock in their hearts. One question after another was thrown out. Why were there so many children in this car? Moreover, these children were not very old. The youngest was only 2 years old. Although they were not injured, they looked very afraid of strangers. Each of them was extremely thin. Where did so many children come from? Why were they locked in the same car? Every man had guts, especially those who were protecting their country. "Captain, this is not normal." The leading Special Forces soldier didn't speak. Instead, he pressed the intercom. "There are too many children in the car. The preliminary suspicion is that it is human trafficking. Take them back first and let the local police investigate. You are only responsible for solving the problem on the train. Don't interfere in other things." The leading Special Forces soldier's fingers paused. Seeing that he didn't speak, someone became anxious. "Captain, obey the order," the leading man said as he pulled out the earpiece. He said in a calm voice, "Protect the children." "Yes." The Special Forces soldiers were very fast and resolute. They cleaned up the scene in less than 5 minutes. As Helly and Vivian expected, they were all taken back to Yunqing for interrogation. Helly and Vivian's statement was very clear. Every sentence pointed out that sixth brother's crime was unforgivable. This day was destined to be a restless one. At nearly 4:00 in the morning, Lu Hongjiang, a big shot, was still sleeping in the hotel with his wife. A phone call told him that a plane had landed on the green train from Yunqing to North Tibet. Now someone had gone to deal with it. All the follow-up work would be handed over to him. Lu Hongjiang was completely awake. "Brother, what's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" Lu Hongjiang didn't even speak. He pulled down the woman's white arm and left with the leather bag. After arriving at the office, his heart was still burning with anxiety. He made a few calls to his subordinates and also made a call to his superiors to inquire about the situation. Every time something went wrong, that person would help him, and this time was no exception. However, it was inevitable that he was a little unhappy. "How many times have I told you? Now the investigation is very tight. Don't let them get ahead of the wind." "Well, let's not talk about the past. I heard that there was a group of people on the train. Since you are in the local police station and sixth brother is involved, lead the public opinion to the private plane. Don't let the abduction spread. Then everything will be easy to solve. You know what to do." That superior hung up the phone after saying that. In Yunqing, Lu Hongjiang was indeed in charge. But in the whole Yun district, that superior had connections, so it would be more convenient for him to do things. Unlike Lu Hongjiang, that superior didn't collude with anyone in Li City. Instead, everyone was familiar with each other, so he turned a blind eye to some things. Even if something went wrong, he could solve it perfectly. So Lu Hongjiang believed in his solution. After all, he was transferred from the capital and knew how to shift the foundation of the incident. With that superior's advice, Lu Hongjiang was no longer so anxious. Instead, he slowly calmed down. This was the advantage of being in this position. He could turn big things into small ones and small ones into nothing. Chapter 9-10. At 6:00, the sun rose and the morning came. Several cars were speeding on the highway, heading towards the toll station in Yun City from northern Tibet. "Boss, what's going on over there?" Monkey's voice came from the headset. Helene Vivian was still sitting in the car that was escorting them to the inspection station. She avoided the sight of the people in front of her and knocked on the headset twice. She couldn't speak. But there was one thing. The small camera installed in her hair had always been there. It was just that they were also on the train, so it wasn't easy to turn it on. Now it was different. She gave this instruction, which meant that she wanted Monkey to turn on the camera and start recording. After Monkey heard the sound, he quickly took out his notebook and entered a bunch of codes. Then, an image popped up on the screen. He was familiar with the image. It was because he was familiar with it that the smile on his face suddenly turned cold. Jean, boss and the others have been caught. We have to erase the records on the train. This isn't the most important thing. The most important thing is the ornaments on Elle's body. If a professional is here, they will definitely find it suspicious. Jean took a sip of wine and looked back at Old A, who was still playing with the children. The corners of his mouth curled up. But that will have to wait until we go to the top to find someone who understands. The local people won't be able to see the use of those ornaments. As long as boss and the others can come out before that, it will be fine. Old A, stop telling these children how powerful little boss is. We have to start moving too. First, how about we disguise ourselves and send some gifts to their families? Nothing else, just a photo will do. It's 6:00 in the morning now. They will have breakfast in half an hour. This is the best time to look at photos. Old A took off the plush toy on his head and put the 3 children down one by one. Then, he said, then we'll disguise ourselves as a courier and buy a second-hand motorcycle. I'll throw it away directly after that and then meet up with you. Oh, right. Jean stood up and smiled evilly. Boss seems to have said that. Monkey, when it's appropriate, you can directly broadcast what boss's camera captured on the internet using a virtual IP. Don't be found out. No problem. Monkey typed on the keyboard with one hand and made an OK gesture with the other hand. Take action. The last 2 words were spoken by Helene Vivian through her headphones. Even though she didn't say anything, the long-time tacit understanding allowed everyone to receive the message in an instant. This also included Suit Man S, and Young Man L. All had the most accessories on his body, but he was extremely secretive. If one wasn't a real expert, they wouldn't be able to tell that those little things would combine into a small pistol. This was something only a mechanical genius like L could do. The Special Forces soldiers who escorted them had been paying attention to the children. They didn't say anything, but they were waiting for a reasonable explanation. They knew that there were always some things that they couldn't let everyone know in order to avoid causing panic. But this time was different. They had fought floods and saved fires. In order to resist the invaders, they did not hesitate to sacrifice themselves. It was all for the sake of making this country better and more peaceful. And this time, there was clearly something wrong with the mission, because the appearance of these children was not part of their mission. There were so many children. How did they get on the train? If no one was involved, no matter how powerful the person was, it would be impossible to bring so many children onto the train at once. What about the ticket inspection? What about the patrol on the train? Didn't they find anything? The Special Forces soldiers were engrossed in their thoughts. No one spoke. At this time, the car just stopped. As soon as the door opened, Lu Hongjiang came over. He had been waiting at the door early in the morning. Because of the plane, many people on the internet were paying attention to the follow-up of this matter. He had to leave a good impression in the hearts of his peers or the media. He deliberately didn't wash up to make himself look a little travel-worn. He reached out and shook the captain of the team. Thank you for your hard work. It's really hard. Well, since we have arrived in Yunqing, you can go and rest. The work of cleaning up will be done by us. There are still a group of children on the train. The captain just opened his mouth. Lu Hongjiang interrupted him. There are still many people here. It's better to sort out some information and investigate before we talk about it. They did have a principle of confidentiality about the mission. In addition, they didn't know why there were so many problems. Moreover, this kind of thing was not within their scope of responsibility, so it was difficult for them to say anything. They were worried that making groundless accusations would cause bad influence. Lu Hongjiang grasped this point. As long as this matter was digested internally, there wouldn't be any influence. It would become an ordinary case. Moreover, he would be the one to decide the outcome of the cleanup work. As long as he controlled this matter well, he would be the one to decide. Lu Hongjiang was quite confident. To him, only these Special Forces soldiers couldn't be controlled. However, the iron discipline of soldiers didn't allow them to say anything to the outside world. It had to be said that Lu Hongjiang's calculations were very good. He was very meticulous in his work and was very good at putting on a show. His eyes were bloodshot, but he still insisted on working. He wanted to personally interrogate who was causing trouble on the train. The word "causing trouble" was used very subtly. Lu Hongjiang's words were equivalent to deciding the nature of this case. He didn't mention the child trafficking at all. He directly led the topic to the matter of the plane stopping on top of the train. He didn't let Sixth Brother go because he knew that it would be easy for others to talk about him if he let Sixth Brother go at this time. Instead, he directly convicted Sixth Brother of participating in the fight on the train. On the surface, he was handling it impartially, but in reality, when comparing large-scale child trafficking, gun carrying, and causing trouble, it was obvious which crime was more serious. The former could directly make Sixth Brother lose his head, while the latter could at most lock Sixth Brother up and let him out very quickly. After doing all this preparatory work, he started the real interrogation. In other words, he didn't interrogate Sixth Brother at all. He directly skipped over him and took the prepared statement in his hands. He was going to interrogate Hellion Vivian and the others. After all, for Lu Hongjiang, the sooner the train incident came to a conclusion, the better. The higher-ups were still waiting for news. If it took too long, it wouldn't be good for him. The first person Lu Hongjiang interrogated was L. He originally thought that since L was relatively young, it would be easier to get information out of him. However, no matter what he asked, L didn't even lift his head after 20 minutes had passed since he came in. Chapter 9:11. If he hadn't glanced at him from time to time, Lu Hongjiang would have suspected that he didn't hear him at all. However, he didn't give any response even after hearing it. The perfect silence made Lu Hongjiang take a deep breath. He turned and walked to the second interrogation room. He didn't believe that none of them would lose control and speak. This time, Suitman S was in the interrogation room that Lu Hongjiang pushed open. Based on Lu Hongjiang's observation of people, the brighter the clothes, the easier it was for him to find out something. Sure enough, as soon as Lu Hongjiang entered the room, S opened her mouth to speak. However, what he said was, "I want to contact my lawyer." Not many people in the mainland could afford a private lawyer, and even fewer people understood the meaning of a private lawyer's existence. If there was a lawyer, anything could be solved by a lawyer. As long as there was no absolute evidence to link the interrogator to the incident, the interrogator had the right to remain silent. Lu Hongjiang felt that it was troublesome to meet such a person, so he decided to take the initiative. "We'll help you contact a lawyer, but you have to tell me why you were on the train." "Of course we were on the train," S replied with a faint smile. At first, Lu Hongjiang thought that this person with a loose mouth might be helpful in his plan. After chatting for 15 minutes, Lu Hongjiang realized that he was just toying with him. He couldn't use him at all. Lu Hongjiang even suspected that the other party had undergone professional training in interrogations. The seemingly random answers were, in fact, carefully thought through each and every one of them. For example, the answer he gave earlier. It was as if they were on the train just because they were on the train. This made Lu Hongjiang's face turn livid. He almost couldn't control his temper. "Okay, stop talking." Suit Man S was obedient. He really shut his mouth when the other party asked him to stop talking. He looked at Lu Hongjiang with a frivolous expression. Lu Hongjiang was frustrated that he couldn't get the slightest clue from two people in a row. Even if he had the ability to hide the truth, he still needed a confession to close the case. If it really didn't work out, he would use some means to extort a confession. However, now was definitely not the time. There were still many people outside, and he had to make himself as gentle as possible. After all, Lu Hongjiang was someone who was familiar with this process and knew how to weigh the pros and cons. He planned to ask one more question. If he still couldn't get anything out of them, then he would have to see how tough these people were. With this thought in mind, Lu Hongjiang pushed open the door of the interrogation room where Hellion Vivian was being held. The two of them sat face to face. He thought that when faced with such a situation, women would always lose their cool. Once a person lost their cool, they would make many mistakes. Even if it was reasonable, it was still the same. However, the other party's eyes were half closed, as if she was resting. After he entered, a smile slowly appeared on her face. Her lazy appearance made it seem as if she had been waiting for him. "We didn't drive the plane there. Besides, didn't someone say in the newspaper that the plane stopped on top of the train because it ran out of fuel?" What he didn't expect was that the other party would actually use a public announcement to shut his mouth. Generally, the public announcement of news was to not create chaos. Did she think that he was a fool? Lu Hongjiang had been in this position for so many years and was used to being looked down upon. His temper was also very bad. It was not easy for him to endure until now. He sneered. "You and I both know why the plane landed on top of the train. Don't play dumb anymore. What kind of place is this? Do you still have room to lie?" "Oh." Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Why don't you explain to me why the plane landed on top of the train?" "Paw." Lu Hongjiang's hand suddenly slammed on the wooden table. "I'm the one interrogating you, not the one interrogating me. Your accomplice has already confessed. It's useless for you to be stubborn. It's better to be honest." "Well, since they've already confessed, then I'll confess too." Hellion Vivian lowered her eyes. She really looked like she was going to confess. In fact, this angle only allowed him to take a clearer picture of the other party's expression. Lu Hongjiang was still smug in his heart. "Women, hee. With just a little scare, you can get anything out of her. That plane really didn't belong to us. We had a small conflict with sixth brother on the train." If Lu Hongjiang used the word troublemaker, well, Hellion Vivian used the word small conflict even more cleverly. Since the other party wanted to turn a big problem into a small one, and a small one into nothing, then she would go along with the other party's wishes. Sure enough, Lu Hongjiang heard and nodded in satisfaction. However, what he didn't expect was that Hellion Vivian's next sentence was actually, "You should be very familiar with Sixth Brother, right?" Hellion Vivian asked very directly. "That Sixth Brother who traffics in human beings." Lu Hongjiang's expression changed and he smiled coldly. "What are you talking about? I don't understand at all." "What Sixth Brother? You're slandering him. Just pretend that you don't know him." "Then why didn't you ask where the children on the train came from? Why did you ask about the origin of our plane?" Hellion Vivian's every word hit the nail on the head. "I don't believe that no one told you that the entire carriage was filled with children under the age of 5. These children were starved and their minds were in a state of collapse. This is the core of this matter, not some plane. Of course, since you asked why the plane was parked on the roof of the car, then I will answer you again. The plane was indeed not driven by us. It was a father who was anxious to find his kidnapped son, so he sent a private jet to find him. I don't know if you are satisfied with this answer." Lu Hongjiang's eyes darkened when he heard Hellion Vivian's words. He could see that this group of people wouldn't admit defeat. "You're really sharp-tongued. You did something wrong, but you don't admit it. You're slandering people like us who want to solve the problem." Hellion Vivian smiled again. "Since you want to solve the problem, when are you going to convict Sixth Brother of his crime? Shouldn't large-scale human trafficking be sentenced to death?" Hearing this, Lu Hongjiang suddenly stood up and put his fingers on the table. He looked at Hellion Vivian coldly. "In this place, even the crime of human trafficking won't be sentenced to death. Moreover, there's a lot of suspicion in your confession. There's no truth in it at all." "Is that so?" Hellion Vivian suddenly smiled and said meaningfully, "I really hope that you'll have this attitude later." Chapter 9:12. At first, Lu Hongjiang didn't understand the meaning of Hellion Vivian's words. Instead, he felt that what she said was somewhat inexplicable. He came out of the interrogation room and planned to use other means to interrogate the next person, Beligaju. But before he could push open the door of the interrogation room, his private phone rang. The person on the other end of the phone was his wife. Her voice was extremely hoarse. "Old Lu, what should we do? Our Heng is missing." "Missing? How is that possible?" Lu Hongjiang turned his head at once. "Have you looked for him in the garden? Did he go to play with the soil again? We've looked everywhere, but there's still no one. The neighbors also said that they didn't see Heng. Why do you think he disappeared when you woke up?" Hearing this, Lu Hongjiang's heart was overwhelmed. "Calm down first. How long has it been since Heng disappeared?" "I don't know when he disappeared, but I've been looking for him for 3 hours. I couldn't get through to you. Where have you been all night? Are you always so busy that you don't even have time to go home and take care of your child?" Lu Hongjiang didn't dare to tell his wife the truth. He slept in the hotel all night. He just rubbed his hair. "Okay, the most important thing now is to find Heng. I'll deal with this matter. Think carefully. Is there anything you haven't found?" If it was an ordinary child who had been missing for so long, Lu Hongjiang would definitely think that the child had been abducted. But this was Yunqing, where he had the final say. Sixth Brother had been worshipping him every year. Who dared to abduct his son? Even if the sky collapsed, nothing would happen to his son. However, in the next moment, Lu Hongjiang's idea was slapped hard in the face. It was not because of anything else, but because when he was about to hang up the phone, a scream came from the other end. "Ah! What's wrong?" Lu Hongjiang asked quickly. The voice on the phone turned into crying, intermittent pain. Old Lu, someone abducted Heng. That's impossible. Lu Hongjiang's voice was high. Why not? The person who abducted your son sent a letter saying that it's because you've done all sorts of heartless things, allowing the local people to casually sell children, and doing anything for profit. That's why they abducted Heng. The other party also said that they want you to think of some children who have memories. What you did, they will do the same thing to Heng. After reading that sentence, Lu Hongjiang's wife gripped the picture tightly and asked in a trembling voice, "Oh Lu, I don't understand. What will happen to the child when he has his memory?" When Lu Hongjiang heard the news, he felt an unprecedented chill. He knew very well how OL6 and the others treated goods. The more difficult it was to transport, the more trouble they would find it troublesome. In order to make the goods more obedient, those children who still had memories would directly make the children's limbs imperfect and then beg. Lu Hongjiang didn't understand. In the past, he had seen a very normal scene, but now, he didn't even dare to imagine that scene. "Old Lu, say something, old Lu." On the other end of the phone, Lu Hongjiang's wife was completely anxious. For some reason, she had a bad feeling about this. Lu Hongjiang's next sentence confirmed this. He said, "I'll go and investigate now. We'll talk about everything after this is over." After hanging up the phone, Lu Hongjiang had his people pull up all the surveillance cameras in the area around them. In the end, it was not easy to find a courier. In the end, he sent people over, but they found that the car had been casually abandoned by the roadside by the owner. This was obviously planned, and the other party's method was very good. They did not leave any trace, so even if the local people wanted to chase after them, they didn't know where to start. It had been almost 5 hours since Lu Hongheng disappeared. Now, Lu Hongjiang really started to understand what Hellion Vivian meant by that sentence. His eyes shook, and his fingers were tightly clenched. The anger in his heart made him kick open the door of the interrogation room. "The person who abducted Heng is you, right?" Lu Hongjiang looked at Hellion Vivian, and it was like he wanted to strangle her to death. "Where is Heng? Hand Heng over." Hellion Vivian leaned back and said indifferently, "It's just a child, and you're so anxious. Just now, a carriage full of children was locked in the train bed, but you didn't seem to be anxious. I'll ask you one more time, where is our Heng?" Lu Hongjiang was clearly a little out of control. Hellion Vivian looked at him and said coldly, "Now you feel uncomfortable?" There were 661 cities on the mainland. Among them, there were 4 municipalities, 283 prefecture-level cities, and 374 county-level cities. Just these cities alone, those parents who wanted to find their children would have to go to a city every day, and it would take them 2 years to go through the entire mainland. Not to mention, there were 1,636 counties under these cities. By the time they finished going through all these places, how old would the children be? It would take them at least 7 years. Even their parents wouldn't know what these children would become in 7 years. If they were lucky, they might be able to find their children. If they were unlucky, they might never see their children again. All this is because someone is trafficking children. You know what kind of business Sixth Brother is in, but you turn a blind eye to it. As long as you get a lot of benefits, as long as no one finds out, as long as no one exposes these things, you will continue to condone it. I have something to ask you. If your child is abducted and sold, why are you still so black-hearted to get the money? Hearing this, Lu Hongjiang's eyes were extremely cold. Sure enough, it's your trick. What do you want? Do you want to be acquitted? Do you know whose territory Yunqing is? Do you want to play the hero here? Let me tell you, if you don't hand Heng over today, you can wait to be shot. That's strange. Didn't you just say that in the mainland, no matter how old the abductor is, he won't be sentenced to death? Why do you want to punish him severely now that it's your son's turn to be missing? Helene Vivian chuckled and raised her eyebrows. Then she moved her fingers and gave a corresponding order to the Bluetooth headset. Lu Hongjiang was so angry that his face turned blue. He made up his mind to give her a heavy sentence. Anyway, he had the right to do so. As for Hing, he didn't believe that he couldn't find him. In Yunqing, he had the final say. But the arrogant Lu Hongjiang didn't know that all his words and deeds were recorded on the computer, and now it was spreading to the whole internet at a fast speed. Chapter 9:13. We're just going to stay here. Not go anywhere. Bailey Shangxie spoke to his imperial father for the first time. His little face was expressionless the whole time. He crossed his arms in front of his chest, wore a punk leather jacket, and had his own goggles on his hair again. He looked very cool. It's better to be with my younger brother than to be locked up with you. Beligaju glanced at his son who was standing beside him indifferently and said in a casual tone, "It's rare that we have the same opinion. But it's a pity that I'm now a father who desperately boarded the train to find his son, so you better be honest. Otherwise, why would I come all the way here to save you? You really listen to your mother." Bailey Shangxie's tone sounded very sarcastic. Bailey Jiaju slightly crossed his legs. That languid appearance was not like sitting in an interrogation room, but rather like drinking afternoon tea. His slender fingers tapped the side of his face. You can choose not to listen. You see if your imperial mother will still like you if you go out now. Bailey Shangxie. So you've been pretending from the beginning to the end. You're good at pretending in front of your mother. You don't have the usual murderous look. That's enough. The father and son had never seen eye to eye with each other. Now, they were in the same interrogation room. The younger one stood coolly beside the older one. His blood-red eyes looked at Lu Hongjiang, who walked in through the door. A bloodthirsty smile appeared on his face. The food is here. Lu Hongjiang didn't realize what kind of father and son he was going to face next. He thought that this was the last person. No matter what, he had to pry open this person's mouth. This time, Lu Hongjiang didn't speak too harshly like the previous few times. This was because he also calculated in his heart. Someone who could fly a private jet into the country must have a certain economic foundation, different from the group of people who wanted to drag him down. Lu Hongjiang believed that the reason this person appeared on that train was probably because his son had been abducted. Thinking of this, Lu Hongjiang couldn't help but curse old Six in his heart. Why is he so bad at doing things? He had hinted before that when he caught those children, he didn't want to touch anyone with a background. There would be a lot of trouble when the time came. Now that he had stirred up trouble, he had to clean it up. Sir, I know that what happened on the train had nothing to do with you, but you should have been in the train carriage at that time. Someone accused Helene Weiwei and her group of people in the carriage of illegal possession of guns and attempted to rob the train. If your testimony is the same as what I understand, then you can go back soon. First of all, how many people did they hurt? Did they destroy all the weapons in their hands? In order to avoid arousing suspicion, Lu Hongjiang had never met Sixth Brother. If he had met Sixth Brother, he would not have asked Beligaju and his son this question. Before Beligaju could say anything, Bailey Shangxie spoke up with a brilliant, bloodthirsty smile. Is this considered a confession? Lu Hongjiang didn't expect to hear the word confession from a 3-year-old child. After being stunned for a moment, he looked at Bailey Shangxie and said, "Little kid, I'm handling a case, and I'm asking your father. In the mainland, it's not illegal for a child to attack a police officer, right?" Little Shangxie didn't care about what Lu Hongjiang was saying. After he finished speaking, he glanced at his father. Bailey Jiaju leaned back and nodded. He looked at Lu Hongjiang with a smile that was not a smile. Lu Hongjiang didn't know why, but that smile made him feel a chill from the bottom of his heart. Why did this little boy ask such a question? Was this a question that a 3-year-old child would ask? Before Lu Hongjiang could react, his arm was twisted by a small, porcelain-like hand. The heart-wrenching pain made him fall to his knees. One of his knees landed heavily on the ground, and he raised his head to look at Bailey Shangxie, whom he had always thought was only 3 years old. From his angle, Bailey Shangxie's eyes were so red that they seemed to be glowing faintly. At this moment, the door of the interrogation room was suddenly opened, and someone rushed in. Bailey Shangxie let go of his hand. He looked regretful. Lu Hongjiang was furious. He swung his left hand and said in a high voice, "Catch this little brat for me." This secretary, he's only a 3-year-old child. According to the rules, he can't be locked up. The person who rushed in said softly, "Why don't you interrogate the older one?" Lu Hongjiang gritted his teeth. The pain really existed in his body, but he couldn't do anything to the other party. This feeling was terrible. He saw that the other party had some money, so he wanted to give him face so that they could get along well in the future. Since the other party didn't buy it, then he shouldn't force him to do anything. Lu Hongjiang twisted his wrist and gave the person behind him a look. Then, another person rushed in. Compared to the previous person, this person's expression obviously changed. He leaned over and whispered a few words in Lu Hongjiang's ear. Lu Hongjiang's expression changed. He no longer had the mood to interrogate. He strode out of the interrogation room and said, "Where's the computer? Give me the computer." The secretary beside him quickly handed him a tablet. His forehead was overflowing with cold sweat. It was obvious that he had seen something. Lu Hongjiang took the tablet and opened the web page. Not only was the sound very clear, even the image was very clear. His every word and every expression was recorded so that people could understand it clearly. Because of the problem with the platform, the reposts and comments were increasing at a crazy speed. Everyone was scolding him for having a beast heart. "I've never seen such a beast. His child is a treasure, but other people's child is grass. There must be an explanation. This kind of person actually stayed in a high position safely for so many years. A car full of children, how many parents' favorite children? In order to reduce human trafficking, we always remind the children to be careful not to eat food given by strangers, not to give directions to strangers, and not to talk to strangers. We take precautions and don't hesitate to wear down the children's innocence. We want to protect them, but in fact, this is not enough. This is not the solution to the problem at all. I keep feeling that this matter is not so simple. Isn't this person too protective of the human traffickers? Is there some inside story? Ask for a technical analysis." Very soon, a technical post appeared on Weibo. This was what Lu Hongjiang feared the most. Chapter 9:14. A certain technical post wasn't like a certain Weibo post that would only vent one's emotions. It would really analyze something and get the attention of the relevant personnel. Especially an original video like this. After all, there was never a lack of people who were truly knowledgeable. Lu Hongjiang clicked on it with trembling hands and saw that someone registered under the name Tang's sect had sorted out all the relative questions in just 10 minutes. That's right, questions. He didn't say anything in an affirmative tone. Instead, he sent 6 questions in a row. The name of the post was 6 Questions to Lu. 1. Why are you defending the human traffickers? 2. As a local bookkeeper, how did so many children get into the station? Have the ticket inspectors never wondered why so many children got on the train at the same time? 3. You made yourself travel worn to the scene. It was indeed very tiring, but which mistress left the kiss mark on your neck? 4. This is clearly a child trafficking case. Why are you defining it as a simple fight? 5. Previously, the data was released. There were 5 main people involved in this case. In other words, you brought 5 people for interrogation. Can you explain why you skipped the main culprit of the child trafficking case, Wu Lu, and kept interrogating the other 4 innocent people who came to look for children? 6. What is your relationship with Wu Lu, the main culprit of this child trafficking case? Also, in our country, not all human traffickers are shot. Article 240 of the criminal law stipulates that those who abduct and sell children in particularly serious circumstances are sentenced to death and confiscation of property. It seemed that Lu Hongjiang should flip through the law book again. As soon as this analysis post was posted, it was instantly forwarded by all the big names on the internet. The internet exploded. In reality, Lu Hongjiang raised the tablet in his hand and threw it on the ground. Find a way to delete all these posts. His secretary followed him and wiped his sweat. We've already informed the relevant departments to delete them, but we can't always do this. Soon, the higher-ups will find out. Moreover, no matter how much we delete, countless posts will appear in a few seconds. We can only prevent this topic from appearing on a certain popular blog, but it's impossible to make it completely disappear. Fortunately, it hasn't fermented yet. As long as you personally explain the origin of the video to the media, there might be a chance to remedy it. Just do as you say. Lu Hongjiang calmed down. Think of a way to make another topic. As long as this topic doesn't become a hot topic, everything will be fine. We'll hold a press conference now. I want to use the traces left on the train to tell everyone that there was indeed a fight on the train. Furthermore, I've never defended the human traffickers. I'm also one of the parents who was persecuted by the human traffickers. My Heng Heng is also missing. We're on the same side as everyone, which is why we interrogated the suspect. The secretary quickly wrote down a few key points and asked, "You mean to let that woman take over the job? There has to be an explanation for such a big thing. This woman is very cunning. She even installed a camera. From now on, I won't interrogate her. Keep an eye on the internet. Don't let that post become popular." Yes. The secretary was confident that she could do it. After all, it was a sensitive issue and could be controlled for a period of time. Regardless of whether it was Lu Hongjiang or the secretary following behind him, they all placed their attention on Helian Weiwei. They even placed a jammer in the place where she was locked up, causing intermittent static to appear in her earphones. However, they didn't know that in fact, the most ruthless person wasn't Vivian, but a certain highness sitting in another interrogation room. Beligaju was still sitting on the chair with his legs crossed. When he looked up at the camera, there was a crackling sound. Without the camera, countless thick black fog surged out behind him. The black fog hid demons that mortals couldn't see at all. A black shadow appeared in mid-air and knelt on the ground. "Master, that human surnamed Lute seems to be very afraid that the video shot by the Princess Consort will be pushed to the top of the news. Now that he has gone to hold a press conference, should we stop him?" "No need." Bailey Jiajua's mouth was obviously smiling, but his eyes were very cold. "If we stop him, how can we play?" He raised 1 million to buy a hot topic. Of course, the video shot by the Princess Consort should be seen by more people. Since he wants to hold a press conference to let more people know how dirty he is, let's help this human. With that, Bailey Jiajue stood up, tied his suit jacket with one hand, and walked towards the door of the interrogation room. The door was originally locked, but when he walked in, the lock was instantly twisted into a different shape. Click. The door opened at the sound. Bailey Jiaju's silvery hair shone with a watery luster under the sunlight. In the face of such a man, many death guards didn't dare to appear. Time seemed to stop in the world. Those people walking in the corridor maintained their original movements, as if they didn't even move. Baligaju walked past them so elegantly. The whole corridor seemed to be echoing with the exclusive Sanskrit sound of the devil. Bailey Shangxie followed behind him, his eyes brighter than ever. The two death guards who were wandering here all hid, squatted in the corner, and stretched their necks to look in this direction. Why are this father and son here? Or did they come out of the interrogation room? Shoo, lower your voice. The big devil might not bother to smash the door, but the little devil might not. Us messengers are like Barbie dolls in his hands, and the kind that can be trampled on very easily. So don't talk, be quiet. Death guards. You asked me to be quiet, why do you have to be so loud? The little devil is already standing behind you, okay? You idiot. Two death guards. Bailey Shangxie glanced at them coolly, reached out his small hand and poked their heads. I don't like to play with death guards recently. Reapers, thank the heavens, you've finally corrected that inhumane hobby of yours. But my younger brother will definitely like it, he hasn't played with it yet. Bailey Shangxie said very seriously, catch them first, I'll let my younger brother play with them later. Death guards, when did you have a younger brother? This is not normal. One little devil is not enough, do you want a second one? Oh no. Bailey Shangxie was very qualified as an older brother, he always thought of little Qingqin. With a tug of his small hand, he dragged the two death guards and caught up with his father's pace again. Chapter 9:15. Baligaju glanced sideways at his son and said faintly, You're already so old, yet you're still playing with such childish things. The Reapers. Childish. Did the great devil use such a word to describe them? They were Reapers, imperial envoys to catch ghosts. They were mighty and domineering. Bailey Shangxie was very cool. I caught them for my younger brother to play with. Hearing that it was for Qingqin, Baligaju did not say much. For the little devils, Reapers were indeed more practical toys. At the very least, they could not be killed. The Reapers who had peeked into the great devil's thoughts were about to cry. So this was the reason why they had been favored by the little devil for so long. It was because they could not die. This was too much of a bully. They had always thought that the little devil valued them so much because of their beauty. Bailey Shangxie saw that the two Reapers' faces had darkened. He stretched out his small hand and poked their heads, ordering, My younger brother doesn't like it. Both of you laugh. The Reapers immediately forced themselves to laugh like flowers. Their teeth were piercing, and their faces were ashen. It was very funny. Bailey Shangxie bent down and observed them. His voice was very domineering. You guys should maintain your original appearance. Don't laugh. It's too ugly when you laugh. You'll scare my younger brother. The Reapers were really about to vomit blood. They regretted coming to this place to catch dead spirits. Woo-woo, they really wanted to go back to the underworld. Although His Highness Little King of Hell was also very vicious, His Highness Little King of Hell was a wife lover. His lifelong wish was to chase after his wife. He did not have extra time to mess with them. But the little devil was different. He really played with them like Barbie dolls. Why was life so difficult? Along the way, Bailey Shangxie dragged the two Reapers, which played a very good role in opening the way. When they reached the press conference, everyone felt an unknown cold wind. The hall, which was originally quite warm, suddenly became cold for no reason. Just as the reporters were about to stand up and get a cup of hot water, they saw Lu Hongjiang and his secretary walking over. Everyone has been waiting for a long time, right? Lu Hongjiang's expression was still the same as before. He sighed elegantly and said, "Let's start the questioning." Of course, the reporters would not let go of this opportunity. After all, these were reporters who had been in contact with Lu Hongjiang before. When they asked questions, they were basically on Lu Hongjiang's side. What do you think of the posts on the internet? It's inevitable that the people above us will encounter such problems. Malicious speculation will only make me more strict with myself. In fact, from the beginning, I defined this case as a human trafficking case, but I didn't catch anyone doing the transaction at the scene. Because of the lack of evidence, in order to avoid alerting the enemy, I interrogated the suspect from the side. Lu Hongjiang's explanation was just to fill in the blanks. The reporters didn't seem to notice it. They followed Lu Hongjiang's words and asked, "You mean that the real human trafficker is the female prisoner you interrogated?" "Yes." Lu Hongjiang's eyes looked at the camera. He deliberately chose a live broadcast in order to regain control of public opinion. Most people on the internet don't know the truth of the matter. Just based on a small video, they think that something has happened to me. In fact, my child is really lost. When I was fighting with these lawless human traffickers, I was already prepared in my heart. I just didn't expect that the revenge would come so quickly. In order to make me compromise, they directly abducted my son and wanted to use the internet to confuse the public. I am also a victim. I lost my son. I am more anxious than anyone else, but I know that if I want to bring all of them to justice, I have to endure the pain and continue to interrogate them. This is the answer I give to everyone. Lu Hongjiang's words were very moving. Some of the audience sitting in front of the TV screen couldn't help but wonder if they were wrong. Perhaps they misunderstood Lu Hongjiang. After all, this bookmaker's reputation had always been very good. Now, in order to investigate the human traffickers, he suffered such revenge. Not only did he lose his son, but his reputation was about to be tarnished. Fortunately, they learned the truth of the matter in time. Otherwise, wouldn't they have lost a good bookmaker who could make decisions for the people? Some netizens began to relax and began to type and leave messages. "These human traffickers are too cunning." At this time, the Internet Water Army hired by the secretary also played a certain role. They began to clear Lu Hongjiang's name. He is a native of Yunqing. People who know Lu Shuji know that he is very approachable. Everything he does is for the sake of Yunqing. I really didn't expect that this time, in order to fight against evil, he would be slandered like this. We should be rational. Especially at this time, the more we can't be instigated by others. Believe in the bookmaker. He will give us a satisfactory answer. As soon as this matter came out, I knew that someone deliberately poured dirty water on the bookmaker in order to get away with the crime. The bookmaker's style has always been strict, and he loves his wife. He won't have a close relationship with anyone at all. But what is worth doubting is why there is a camera in the interrogation room. This is simply a plot designed by the human traffickers long ago. More and more interview scenes were played at the same time during the live broadcast. The reporters turned the microphones to Lu Hongjiang again, and said with sincerity, "We've really wronged the bookmaker. There's nothing to be wronged about. Now I just want to find my son and bring the real human traffickers to justice. No one knows how cruel they will be to my son." Lu Hongjiang said as he turned his head and closed his eyes tiredly, as if he was trying to bear the pain of losing his son. It had to be said that his acting was very good. No one saw the ferocious look on his face when he turned his face. She wanted to drag him down with a video. She was really whimsical. When the press conference was over, it would be the time of death for that woman. Lu Hongjiang was acting complacently, but he didn't see that at the end of the crowd, Beligaju raised the corner of his mouth. That kind of smile indicated that the game had just begun, the secretary still stood aside and cooperated with Lu Hongjiang. Because of this case, the bookmaker has not closed his eyes for a day and a night. Now he needs to rest for a while. If there are no more questions for the reporters, clatter. Before the secretary finished her words, there was a burst of white on the big screen in the hall. Hello. There's no sound from the microphones. What's going on? The secretary looked at the person controlling the equipment. Those people didn't know what was going on. Their equipment was still intact, but they didn't make a sound. After a second of pause, the screen finally showed a new image. The secretary was about to smile and continue what she had just said when she realized that the video on the screen had completely changed. Chapter 9:16. In the live broadcast, there was a private room surrounded by smoke. There were both men and women in the room. The women were wearing very revealing clothes and were behaving very flirtatiously. It was obvious what kind of place this was. When Lu Hongjiang saw the private room, his expression changed. Before the image became clear, he roared behind him, "Close it. Close all of these things for me." The staff member controlling the video heard Lu Hongjiang's order and started to press the stop button, but it was useless. The image continued to play and became clearer. It even showed the face of one of the men in the room. That man's appearance was too familiar. If it wasn't Lu Hongjiang, who else could it be? He was even wearing his favorite suit. He was hugging a busty woman in his arms and kissing the woman's face carelessly. He must have drunk a lot because his face was still rosy. His hands were still touching the woman's body. His eyes were half closed and he was lustful. Whatever elegance he had was all gone. He was extremely ugly. God! The reporters present couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. After they reacted, they started to take pictures of Lu Hongjiang. Although they were indeed invited by Lu Hongjiang, and usually helped Lu Hongjiang to guide public opinion, this time, it was big news. Now, whoever could take pictures of Lu Hongjiang's reaction would get ratings and an absolute headline. Lu Hongjiang's face was extremely pale. He even strode to the control panel and reached out to press all the switches, but it was useless. It was still useless. Not only was it useless, but there was even sound in the image. It was the sound of him talking to Old Sixth. It was also the sound of him talking to Old Sixth on the night of the train departure. He specially instructed Old Sixth, "The higher-ups are very strict now. It's not like before. Be careful and give those children more medicine so that they can be transported out." That was his voice. He couldn't deny it even if he wanted to. This time, Lu Hongjiang was completely flustered. His palms were full of sweat. He reached out and pulled the secretary over. "What's going on? What's going on? Who touched the things here?" I don't know either." Usually, the secretary is closely related to the laptop. When the secretary saw the video, she was no less shocked than Lu Hongjiang. Scandal. This was the first reaction. With this video as a comparison, what Lu Hongjiang said just now was like shit. No matter how she thought about it, it was disgusting. Lu Hongjiang was like a headless fly. He didn't care if the reporters were still at the scene. He took out his phone and randomly dialed a string of numbers. "Hurry up and stop the live broadcast. Shuji Lu, it's not that I don't want to help you, but the right to broadcast for half an hour after you was bought by someone else. I'm a qualified media person. As long as there are no clear instructions, I'll broadcast for whoever pays the money. Business is business." When Lu Hongjiang heard the reply, he wished he could smash his phone on the spot. He never thought that someone would actually spend money to buy the broadcasting rights of the radio station. Who in the world had such great financial resources? Who was it that wanted to kill him? Weren't those people locked up? And this video? How did they get their hands on it? Since there was such a video, why didn't they release it at the start? Why did they have to wait until he held a press conference? Too ruthless. The other party was too ruthless. Was he trying to humiliate him in front of the entire nation? Or was he trying to make him lose his life? Lu Hongjiang felt a chill in his heart. He was really scared because the radio station wasn't like the internet. Once it was broadcasted, he was afraid that even that person wouldn't be able to save him. But when exactly was it, and what method did the other party use to understand and investigate so much about him? Of course, Lu Hongjiang didn't know that as early as when Bailey Shangxie was brought to Yun City, a certain highness had already grasped all these things in his hands. However, he had never been interested in human affairs. Lu Hongjiang's mistake was that he caught someone he shouldn't have. A certain highness principle of doing things had always been that those who provoked him would never have a chance to live. Beligaju was still very elegant. His beautiful eyes watched this scene with a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. This made him look like a vampire aristocrat who walked out of a movie. It could be seen that the reason Lu Hongjiang became like this was all thanks to a certain highness. Bailey Shangxie didn't comment on Lu Hongjiang's fate. The person who arrested his mother and younger brother for interrogation deserved this fate. Humans, were a dirty species from head to toe. They even wanted to put the blame on their mother in front of their father. They were simply stupid to the point of having no brains. The expressions of the father and son were simply in sync. The older one and the younger one curled their lips. After a bloodthirsty smile, they turned around and walked back to the interrogation room amidst the chaotic crowd. Unlike Beligaju, Bailey Shangxie was still dragging two reapers in his hands. He looked like a domineering person who didn't want anyone to approach him. It was as if they really just came out for a stroll, a reaper stroll. Reapers. Are we used for strolling? Is that so? The father and son walked without looking back. They didn't even have the intention to look back. Because of the impact caused by their appearance, a large number of reporters rushed in from all directions and blocked Lu Hongjiang's path. Lu Shuji, how do you explain what happened in the video? Who is the woman you were holding in your arms? She shouldn't be your wife, right? You are also a person with a son. Aren't you afraid of retribution for doing such a thing? This time, not only the television station, but also all the major networks were broadcasting it live. Everyone in the streets and alleys stopped. Some people were browsing certain blogs on their phones. Some people directly saw the big TV screen in the shopping mall and started discussing. Almost everyone exploded. Beast! This person surnamed Lu is a complete beast. I really don't dare to imagine that there would be someone so vicious to this extent. They are simply colluding with each other. They even want to push the blame on others. Such a person should be shot. We should have snatched his son long ago and let him taste the pain of losing a child. There must be an explanation. Is there no one to control him? Lu Hongjiang finally returned to his office with great difficulty. He still wanted to find his old connections to protect him. At this time, Monkey broke the interference from before. Although Hellion Vivian didn't go out, it didn't affect her command at all. She sat in the interrogation room and commanded everything like a queen. Through the Bluetooth headset, she directly threw out the third trump card. Chapter 9:17. A mother who had lost her son searched through more than 20 cities and finally found her child in Yunqing. However, because her act of saving the child affected the interests of some people, she lost her life in an unfinished community. She never expected that after she called the police, what awaited her was a death. Next to the unfinished community was the warehouse where the traffickers kept the children. The incident once again occupied the hot search of a certain Weibo in the form of text and text. Almost everyone was paying attention to its development. The evilness of the matter was raised to a higher level. This time, not only Lu Hongjiang, but also other people, such as the local law enforcement officers, the management staff of the train station, and so on, would be held accountable. Perhaps when they did these things, they did not know the ultimate purpose. They just did Secretary Lu a favor. However, in fact, because of Secretary Lu's call, they allowed so many children to be taken on the train together without even asking. When there was a murder case, they did not conduct an in-depth investigation. It was simply dereliction of duty. Unlike trafficking, this was a living human life. In the mainland, as long as it was related to murder, it would receive absolute attention. When Lu Hongjiang saw this news, his whole person fell into the office chair dispiritedly. He knew that this time, his official career was completely over. No one could save him anymore. He could only hope that his old boss could save his life. Public opinion may be controllable, but people's hearts would never be at peace. Yun Cheng had to give an explanation. They sent a team to take Lu Hongjiang directly from the office. However, it was obvious that this time, people were not so easily fooled. The incident itself had angered the people of the country. The reason why Lu Hongjiang could be so lawless was because of the cooperation of other departments. This time, they did not only want to see a scapegoat. They wanted to punish all of them. The anger from the heart had reached the point of uncontrollable. The higher-ups were also actively holding meetings to seriously investigate the incident in Yunqing. The people in charge of the relevant departments had arrived. They were afraid, but at the same time, they felt that it was not a big deal. After all, they were not the main culprits. At most, they would be transferred. Indeed, if this happened in the past, they would not be severely punished. After all, it was not easy to determine the exact responsibility. In addition, no one wanted their people to be arrested. Therefore, the person sitting at the top of the table did not say anything. He just sat there and listened to the people below. In the end, this matter is Lu Hongjiang's sole responsibility. The people from the other departments were also not clear about the situation, so they made all kinds of mistakes. Even if they were not clear about the situation, they were still actively cooperating. There is no need to arrest the others. If that is the case, it will only make those who do things against the country more arrogant. Compared to internal punishment, I think we should first arrest the main alliance that caused this matter. Now, not only is Lu Hongjiang's son in their hands, but they have also taken away the other children. This is clearly a threat to us first. This is a crime. Deputy Director Zhang is right. They dared to record a video and hack into our system in the interrogation room. It's clear that they don't take us seriously. Keeping such a person alive would be a threat to society. Yes, I also suggest that we punish these criminals first. He must be severely punished. If he didn't make an ugly face, wouldn't it be a complete mess in the future? Internal problems can be solved slowly. We have to give everyone an explanation. These criminals are different. They are simply lawless. That's right. Severe punishment. Severe punishment. When the person for discipline inspection heard that, he looked down indifferently. This person had a military background and was an old general. It was said that he had always had a bad temper when he was in the military, but ever since he became the person for discipline inspection, he did not lose his temper easily. He was always smiling at everyone, but anyone who had been in the military knew that this person was not to be trifled with. Unfortunately, none of these officials had ever been in the military. "Are you done?" the old general asked them with a smile. Those people thought that he agreed with their opinion and nodded, not forgetting to take a sip of tea. Unexpectedly, in the next second, there was a loud bang. The old general casually smashed the teacup in his hand on Deputy Director Zhang's head. As a deputy director of the police station, you use this excuse to excuse yourself when something happens. Your mouth is full of bullshit. Deputy Director Zhang did not expect the other party to suddenly explode. He was completely at a loss. He reached out and covered his forehead. He stared blankly at the old general and stammered, what about you? Take him away right now. As for the criminal you keep talking about, I have been watching from the side since she carried out her first mission. Compared to her, you are a bunch of trash. When the United States invaded Huaxia, she was one of the defenders. As the old general spoke, the door creaked open. With a creak, the door to the conference room opened. A tall and slender figure walked out from the intersection of light and shadow. That person's gait was perfect. Probably because of long-term training, even his walk was pleasing to the eye. That person was wearing a navy blue military uniform. The workmanship of the uniform was very exquisite. It made his legs long and his back straight. The spurs on his leather high boots shone brightly. When the light shone on the military emblem on his shoulder, it gave off a faint glow, as if to suppress all the glamour. He was indescribably handsome. At this moment, he was tilting his head slightly. He raised his eyebrows slightly and lowered them again. Teacher, let me do the questioning myself. After all, I am one of the leaders. As he spoke, that person looked around and said with a smile, I heard that someone wants to denounce the Tang sect. Who is it? Come forward. How could anyone dare to step forward? Everyone's faces had turned extremely pale when they heard the words, Tang sect. Not only did no one dare to step forward, but everyone held their breaths and did not even dare to move their hands. They did not expect that this operation was not led by an ordinary person with no background, nor was it led by the small organization they had encountered before. It was led by the Tang sect. In other words, this investigation was led by the Tang sect. The Tang sect had always been a secret department used to resist external enemies. No one could predict the power of this department. First, it was because of its mystery. Second, it was because of its leader. Young Master Tang. Chapter 9:18. Young Master Tang did not only have a certain level of strength in the military. Just his background alone was enough to shut everyone up. The first time people heard of this name, he was only 8 years old. An incident once happened on 6th Avenue in New York. Nearly 7 ATMs were not controlled by anyone and kept spitting out money. This incident not only alarmed the higher-ups, but even the media made a shocking report at that time. Everyone was guessing who had the ability to hack into the United States defense. It must be a hacker group. However, when they found out, it was the Tang family that controlled the entire Chinatown. At that time, old Master Tang was holding a dragon-headed walking stick and sitting next to him was a little boy. That little boy was born autistic. Other than the Sudoku in the newspaper, he did not react to anything else. He did not cry or laugh. However, it was this child who was able to hack into many network defenses with a laptop. At the end of 1997, those who read the foreign news knew how much hype this incident had at that time. The boy was brought to the interrogation hole. Because he was too young, they did not immediately make a decision. That was because the Americans did not want to judge him. Instead, they wanted to fight for him. They could provide many superior conditions to this little boy. As long as the Tang family agreed to change the little boy's nationality to the United States, they would immediately let him enter the most cutting-edge technology department. Old Master Tang did not agree. As the biggest Chinese businessman, his strength in the United States was definitely not inferior to that in China. He only gave the Americans one sentence: the Tang family must become a Chinese soldier. That was right, a soldier. This person was born in the wealthiest family in Chinatown. Compared to his eldest brother and second brother, he did not look like he was born in the Tang family at all. Because to put it bluntly, he was a fool. The Americans once used this to negotiate with Old Master Tang, saying that it was most suitable for such a child to be raised by them. After all, his life skills were basically zero. Other than computers, what else could this child do? However, there were so many people in the Tang family, but Old Master Tang valued this little grandson the most and wanted to send him back to China. Just like that, 10 years later, the Falcon Special Forces produced a young Master Tang who made the world tremble. Because of his presence, no one dared to enter the border for 3 years. It would be fine if such a person was only outstanding in the military. However, he also knew how to play politics. This caused the group of people to be on tenterhooks. To be precise, the border was just southwest of Cloud City, and that was Falcon's defensive zone. How could they dare to compete with this man who had suddenly appeared? Deputy Director Zhang's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. Young Master Tang just walked up to him and smiled. Deputy Director Zhang, right? Deputy Director Zhang straightened his back. After all, the other party was only one level higher than him. He did not need to be so humble. Perhaps the rumors were just rumors. It's me. He accepts bribes, likes to gamble, and is also involved with Myanmar. Young Master Tang's fingers moved and the gun in his palm was pointed directly at his forehead. That posture was very handsome and crisp. Do you know why Wei Wei took your child away? It's because of these unforgivable crimes. Now, who else can continue to stand up? With a gun pointed at them like this, who would dare to stand up? Deputy Director Zhang was so scared that his legs gave out. Young Master Tang then put the gun back and said concisely, "Take them away." Not too many, not too few. The 3 related people, those who were lucky and still wanted to talk to the old general, were all secretly brought back. The old general was furious when he saw young Master Tang. "Bastard, how dare you pull out a gun in front of me? Didn't you see my military rank? Or didn't you see me?" Young Master Tang cooperated at this time. He took a step back with his left leg and then put his feet together in a standard military salute. "General, you are not wearing a military uniform today. You. The old general had a love-hate relationship with his favorite disciple. He pointed at him and said, "You're too high profile this time. How many times have I told you to keep a low profile when you're on a mission? Is the National Security Agency treating you badly? If they are not good to you, come back to me. You can do whatever you want here." Young Master Tang looked forward and saluted again. "General, I obey orders and follow orders." When the old general heard this, he wanted to slap the back of his head. When had this kid ever been so obedient? This was nonsense. "Fine, then don't come back. But did you really arrange this operation in advance? Why didn't I receive any news?" The old general raised an eyebrow. Young Master Tang smiled. "Wei Wei is too fast. She's already settled everything here before we even got the news. However, I still have to ask about the plane. You know that the Tang sect has limited funds and can't afford a private jet." When the old general heard this, he almost spat out the tea in his mouth. This brat is crying poor. He actually dares to come here and cry poor. After talking for 10 minutes, the old general chased him away. He was afraid that if his favorite disciple didn't leave, the good-tempered image that he tried so hard to maintain in front of others would be ruined. This brat can really anger people to death in minutes. However, the old general also told young Master Tang that even if he didn't come, these people would be severely punished. This time, the pressure not only came from the original mission, but also from the person who appeared on the train in a private jet. His background was not simple enough to compete with the Tang sect. After hearing this, young Master Tang put down the cigarette in his hand and smiled meaningfully. It's time to meet. On the other side, the old general was confused. On the other side, Bailey Shangxie did not return to his original place. He dragged the two ghost messengers and walked to the interrogation room where Qingchen was being held. It was not difficult for the little demon to pass through the crowd. In addition, everyone was dealing with the discussions of the outside world, so no one was watching this side. Therefore, it was very easy for Bailey Shangxie to walk in. Qingchen was still sitting on the chair, playing with something with her head lowered. When she saw the two ghost messengers behind Bailey Shangxie, she instantly sat up straight. I'm using someone else's laptop now, so I can't update. This is bad news. The good news is that there will be a new book after this book is finished. I hope you guys are still here. Then, I used your tips to buy a cup of coffee. I've recovered and went to the shooting location. Thank you, girls. I'll let you guys enjoy reading the new book. I can't go back yet, so I can only fly on the 1st. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.